You're now listening to the sound of us following an incredibly predictable formula to satisfying results. But did Ghostbusters Afterlife do the same? Well, that's what we're here to discuss. Because for some reason, inexplicable even to us, we saw the movie Ghostbusters: Afterlife, Dawn of Justice, and we're going to litigate it and the decline of Western civilization. I'm just guessing we're going to litigate the decline of Western civilization because I don't know how you talk about this movie without litigating the decline of... I'm showing my hand early. Maybe this movie was awesome. Hey, speaking of awesome, let's introduce some characters. And I'm sure their arcs will definitely go somewhere. All right. Shut up, Nathan. Let's just introduce the guys and do the show. All right. We've got Ben Sulzer, preacher who's a teacher of cinema, right there.
Here I am.
How you doing, Ben? Oh, I'm Nathan,
right.
your humble and obedient host.
You are Nathan.
You're listening to Sanity at the Movies.
Like humble and obedient ghost.
That's right. Who are you going to call? Me. Hey.
I'll call you a Ghostbuster.
Are you threatening to kill me?
Busted.
No.
Yeah, you're busted. If you kill me, please, I'd just like to state right now, if anyone kills me, you are not allowed to use my CGI likeness in anything.
You better get that in writing, buddy.
No, I trust my fans to burn down Benjamin J. Sulzer's house after he tries to use my CGI likeness. And oh boy, all right. Ben, why don't you introduce the other guy, the third guy, the linchpin that holds the whole podcast together?
I will do it. He is Pastor Jacob Menzel, the pastor who's a master of cinema?
Yeah, I think so.
Is that what we said?
Probably.
Okay, that's what we're saying.
That's what we're going with.
Ghostbusters Afterlife, guys. What baggage do you have with the franchise, the multimedia franchise, I guess we're calling it now, that is Ghostbusters? Jake?
I grew up with Ghostbusters. I grew up with the original. I grew up with Ghostbusters 2. I remember all of the cool stuff. Like, I have pretty vivid memories of Ghostbusters 2 coming out and all of the stuff about it, all of the like cups and toys and all the things. And I had a proton pack and I had a jumpsuit and I had a Slimer puppet thing.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
That was like, you'd stick your hand in the back and be Slimer. And I had Ecto 1 and I had a whole bunch of the things.
So weird that Slimer doesn't get a cameo.
Yeah. Why they wanted to replace Slimer with Muncher and not give us even a Slimer cameo, even in the one of the two post-credit scenes.
Yeah, at the very least, have Slimer come out of the ghost containment facility at the very end, but also just
Onion Head, I think his name is.
I know, but the world knows Onion Head as Slimer.
That's right.
And so they should.
Yeah, so, I mean, I had a trap. I had all the, like, it was like an air pump trap thing, so you push it, and it pushed the air through and opened up the trap. I had all the things. My brother and I had all the things, and I watched the cartoon show even. I have memories of the cartoon show. I think we had at least one monster that was probably a cameo from the cartoon show. When we had the much too short monsters are now all over the place scene. So I have a lot of fondness and nostalgia for a Ghostbusters franchise that I did not understand as a kid for what it actually was, and came to understand it later as an adult as the tongue-in-cheek, sarcastic, kind of mean thing that it actually was later, and still kind of like. So, I don't know.
So you are the primo audience for this movie. You are perfect because you actually remember Ghostbusters as a really exciting adventure film.
I remember it as an exciting, fun thing. Ghostbusters 2, I would have said, much like as a kid, Last Crusade or
Return of the Jedi are your favorite franchise films, and Indiana Jones and Star Wars as a kid. Ghostbusters 2 was my favorite as a kid. And I still kind of want to stand by Ghostbusters 2 as an enjoyable, fun, dopey, whatever it is. It doesn't quite have the magic of the first one, but I don't know. I'm a sucker for that sort of thing, I guess, or a sucker for nostalgia.
when did Ghostbusters 2 come out?
I want to say 89.
Yeah, so my parents were still together.
Yeah.
So that's part of it too that I don't want to write off.
But also,
it still represents a part of my whole childhood before my parents divorced, I think, too. So it's got probably some hooks in me that way, too.
well, I also just Ghostbusters 2 is a better kids film in a lot of ways. It probably has vulgar stuff that I don't remember. But,
it does.
But what's the name of the painting?
Vigo.
Yeah, Vigo the Carpathian is a fun, creepy villain, whereas the first one is more like Dan Aykroyd's really into the occult.
Right.
But Vigo the Carpathian's like, ooh, spooky painting. And then the Statue of Liberty thing, which is pretty lame, is fun for a kid. Although you just can't beat the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
You can't beat Stay Puft. But what you can, how you can beat it for a kid is have Bill Murray actually hamming it up with a microphone, you know, as the Statue of Liberty is, you know, and have the Dock Harbor guys, you know, who are going to see the Titanic come in, also see the Statue of Liberty walk by and stuff like that.
Yeah, you're making me want to go back to it.
Lady Liberty's going to bust a hole in the top of the slime egg that covers the...
Yeah, it's too bad love saves the day in that movie, though. I don't think love should ever save the day in any Ghostbusters movie.
Yeah.
I mean,
okay.
love has now saved the day in more movies in the franchise than it hasn't saved the day, but I really think we need to just be like, let's...
It's also got some of the creepiest jump scares. For it being more kid-ish, like once you get down into the subway and have the subway jump scares, that's like, it's about as gross and creepy as a scene as you could imagine in any of it. Like it outdoes Indiana Jones's skeleton jump scare scenes.
Yeah, the average kid, my memory is that the average kid thought that Ghostbusters 2 was the scary one. And the average adult was like, maybe we shouldn't turn on Ghostbusters 2. But I think that both the kid and the adult were actually wrong, because Ghostbusters 1 has a pretty famous vulgar scene that you just can't escape. I mean, you can fast forward it, but it's there in the movie and very kid unfriendly.
Yep.
And the demonic stuff is just more demonic feeling.
Well, and then you have also Dana Barrett's Possessed.
Right. You have the Keymaster and all that stuff. Yeah. And then you have, yeah.
You have her like in that slinky gown and hovering over the bed, basically doing...
Yes.
Yeah. You know, the more you talk about it, the more I am a little embarrassed to own how much affection I have for this franchise.
Well,
but that's the reality of it.
Mm-hmm.
So
you grew up with it. I mean, these things happen. Ben, what's your baggage with Ghostbusters?
I never saw it until I was a teenager. Never seen Ghostbusters 2. So saw Ghostbusters 1, liked it okay. Didn't like, I think I was uncomfortable with sexual humor and never thought about it again.
You are a huge fan, though. You'll never stop telling me and Jake how much you love the Melissa McCarthy, Kristen Wiig, or whatever
Ghostbusters Reborn.
Ghostbusters 2016.
That's a masterpiece.
That's like one of your favorite films. I think it's like Amazing Spider-Man 2, Ghostbusters 2016.
Those are.
Well, I think what I recall you telling me is that you really appreciated the nuances of Chris Hemsworth's performance in that film.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I mean, he's always nuanced, but in that movie,
oh yeah,
let me tell you, it's almost like he's not even there. There's only nuance there.
Yeah,
where he should be.
Chris Hemsworth his weight in gold.
Yeah, that's right.
In terms of the things he brings to that movie.
That's right. So, yeah, that's all. So I had no expectations of almost anything coming to this movie.
Well, Ghostbusters, for me...
I never saw that one, by the way, just so the record.
Nope.
I'm so glad you cleared that up. I was like, it sounds like Jake has seen it. We could clarify right now, but I don't want to embarrass Jake in front of our dear listeners, so I'm not going to do it. So I'm glad you took the initiative.
Yeah, I never bothered with that.
Yeah, no, it looks stupid, and also feminism sucks. And
feminism sucks, ruins everything. Lesbo chic ruins everything.
That chick, oh man, I can't stand her. Not Kristen Wiig, she's fine. Melissa McCarthy can be funny, but the zany Saturday Night Live chick, she plays the Spangler role, I think. I really don't like her at all.
Don't know who.
And I forget what her name is. She's the blonde. She's the thin blonde.
Yep.
She's not the black lady, and she's not the two whose names I know. But my memory, so Ghostbusters is one of a handful of films that I think of as quintessentially a dad movie. because my dad loved Ghostbusters and he felt bad about it. Like there was the scene that you had to fast forward, and my dad really hated anything with the smacked of the demonic, but he just thought Bill Murray was so funny. And so there were just certain things, my dad wasn't big on like violent movies and stuff, but there were just a few things that got grandfathered in, as I think every family has. Mm-hmm. There were a few things that got grandfathered in. And so Mad Max was one of them. I don't know why Mad Max just tickled my dad's funny bone too. Like just the over the top, I'm going to throw a razor boomerang and then the bad guy's going to catch it and his fingers are going to get cut off. Just like all the kind of ridiculousness of Mad Max is kind of touched some part of my dad's heart somehow for some reason, as it does many a dad. And Ghostbusters, like he just thought Bill Murray was so funny. And so I just have like, I could just picture my dad sitting on the couch laughing like at Ghostbusters and the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. It was a pretty sweet memory, actually, but I really think of that as a dad movie. And then a movie that my dad took me to see that I associate with Ghostbusters because he loved it, and it's a similar formula, is Men in Black. And he really thought that movie was funny, and I thought that movie was funny. And as I've said many times, probably on this podcast, but certainly in real life, I've said it, IRL, Men in Black, I think, is the superior high concept, wisecracking guys fighting some kind of preternatural or supernatural
less like
menace.
Objectionable too, isn't it? If memory serves, or am I wrong?
it's got some
stuff.
Not entirely unobjectionable, but nothing on the level with the scene from Ghostbusters.
Yeah, I just can't remember Men in Black that well.
Yeah, I think two fast forwardable scenes in Ghostbusters and some illusions that could pass over. Like it's just, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean the coroner ladies is a little obnoxious,
right? That whole scene, that's part of what I was thinking of.
Yeah, but there's not. I mean, I'm not claiming Men in Black is like wholesome, but compared to Ghostbusters, it is. I think there's just. I actually just watched in preparation for this. I watched an interview with where Johnny Carson was interviewing Aykroyd, and Aykroyd was like, "Yeah, Ghostbusters, it's our new family picture. Bring the whole." And it's just like, oh, that's what they thought a family picture was back in 1984. Mm-hmm. So Jake I think we could say was actually the most excited about this movie.
I had hyped myself up to the point that I was convinced. Well, I don't know I don't think I was actually convinced.
You had to lean into it because I went the opposite direction.
Yeah,
and said,
so
they're going to have CGI Harold Ramis and it's going to suck and we're going to hate it.
We're going to hate it all. So I said I quickly imagined the best possible version of how all that could play out in my mind and said, it's going to be the best movie of the year. It's going to surprise us all. It's going to dethrone No Time to Die. And Spider-Man's not going to touch it for heart. And
you had a couple good things in your corner for that argument. Number one, Jason Reitman, talented filmmaker.
Talented indie filmmaker who's hadn't sold out by and large coming into this.
Boy, did he sell out in this one.
Oh, my goodness.
To Walmart, of all places. Oh, man. There's a scene where this movie just dies, where they just say, we gave up and we no longer wish to make a film. And it is a scene where Paul Rudd goes through one. But we'll talk about it. We'll get to it. But what were we talking about? Oh, yeah, you were saying you were. So Jason Reitman was like, oh, this is interesting. And the legacy
he had refused, and they'd come to him multiple times.
Yeah, he's got this nice narrative that he says in interviews. Like his dad, Ivan Reitman, if you don't know, Ivan Reitman directed Ghostbusters, big comedy director in the 80s. Jason's like lived with it his whole life. He was a little boy on the Ghostbusters set, goofing off with Bill Murray and everything. Like he can remember.
He has those stories.
Right. But his whole life, like, he's an indie comedy guy. He's coming up. Hey, and Columbia is trying to put together their new Ghostbusters franchise. He's kind of an obvious pick for it, but he's just, no, I don't want to do it. And then Harold dies and he gets the idea like, oh, this is how we can do it.
I can use this movie to process my own grief about my father's absence, being out there making movies and ignoring me through all of this, and through the death of Harold Ramis and the death of Eon as a character. And you've got this filmmaker who knows how to make a comedy, who knows how to have a story with heart.
Right.
And then you have this property that's beloved and has all kinds of opportunity to go any number of directions with that kind of a story. And then you look at some of the cinematography from the trailers, and it's like, okay, now just like you would say, if you're going to, like when we were talking about Solo, the way to do Solo is not to try to make a Star Wars movie, but to try to make an Indiana Jones movie.
Right.
If you're going to have somebody step into Harrison Ford's role, the way to help sell that is to actually try to make an Indiana Jones movie so that as much of it feels iconic Harrison Ford as possible and melds it all. So if you're going back to a 1980s property, even though it's not a Spielberg property, and you're trying to instill some magic or recapture some of the magic of people who would have seen that movie as a kid, then what you do is you try to make a Spielberg movie with the Ghostbusters IP. I think that's a smart angle. That's what everything about the trailers was selling to you, was I took the Ghostbusters IP and I made a Spielberg movie out of it. And you can trust me, it's going to be funny. It's going to have more heart than the other ones because that's what we want. With some nostalgia, we're all here for as much nostalgia bait as anything else. It's going to be funny and it's going to be irreverent in its own ways, but it's also going to have some heart. And part of how we're going to communicate that is look at these shots. Don't they feel Spielberg?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, all right, we got a director that's smart, that stayed indie, or reasonably smart. He stayed indie. He's got a good father line on all of this property. The reluctance to take up the big budget blockbuster, mantle of his own father. Harold Ramis is dead.
Mm-hmm.
All of the pieces are there to tell a really fun, funny, cool, irreverent, but at the end of the day, a lot of heart kind of film that resonates in the right ways with the 1980s, but also feels like it's a story for today.
Right.
And so, you can talk yourself into all kinds of good ways of doing that, or all kinds of good ways of how that would play out. And I sure as heck did.
Well, and you can argue why make it, because it's obvious in the trailers, this is going to be like a Spielberg-y kind of Amblin adventure film. And you could argue, oh, don't do that. The original is an irreverent comedy. Where's the irreverent comedy? But it's actually smart. It's smart because you're making a sequel to the way that 6-year-old Jake felt when he saw the original Ghostbusters, as opposed to what the original Ghostbusters actually is,
right?
Which has nothing to do, or not
with
much,
how I felt when I was 5.
But it's what we've always said. I think, sort of in defense, not in defense, but just descriptively, as it's true and right that they have amped up the scariness and the violence of the new Star Wars movies because they're actually making a sequel to the way that a 5-year-old felt seeing Star Wars, but now we're all in our 30s, which means we need darker villains in order to evoke, we can't just have a guy in a robot suit walk out in a hallway and feel quite the same way. So we have to amp it up somehow.
Yeah, it's definitely a choice that you make for those reasons. You can argue with it being the right choice, but there's a defense for it.
Yeah, I think there's a defense for it. Mm-hmm. And I actually think one of the things I want to get to, and I won't get to it just now, but one of the things that this movie made me do is actually appreciate Force Awakens. I think Force Awakens makes a lot of right choices, actually, where this movie makes choices that are just horrible bummers. But
well, this movie tries to do everything from The Force Awakens to The Rise of Skywalker in one movie. And yuck.
What's that?
Are we still getting the...
Is it your fan?
I think it might be the fan.
Okay.
Yeah, this microphone's just better.
Okay.
But that fan edits out nicely, actually.
Yeah, it does try to do it, and then it has these long extended sequences that, well, we'll get to them.
Yes, it does have long extended sequences that we'll get to. Let's talk a little bit more about Ghostbusters 1984, though, because I don't think we're actually going to... maybe one day we'll just do Ghostbusters 1984. Yeah. But I want to talk about that movie and give actually a little context for that movie, because I think it occupies a really interesting place in Hollywood history. And you have to understand what that movie did and what that movie was in order to understand this one. And I think in order to understand why it's so dumb that they keep trying to franchise this property. And I want to talk about Bill Murray, too, because he is the shadow that sort of hangs over this movie. That's not the metaphor I want. He's the elephant in the... Well, Harold Ramis is one elephant in the room.
He's the pixie dust.
Yeah.
In 1984's Ghostbusters.
Right.
And he just is. And part of, I know that we're getting ready to talk about this, but part of what's awesome about that movie is especially going back to it or just looking back on it as an adult is how stupid everybody thought that movie was in the first place and how Bill Murray was not pretending. It's just
let me talk
hilarious.
Let me talk about what Bill Murray does, because Bill Murray fascinates me. I think he fascinates everybody. Everybody likes to share and read the articles where it's like, Bill Murray came up behind me and
put his hands over my eyes.
And then I turned and I saw it was Bill Murray and he said, they'll never believe you, and winked and walked away. You know, he has this kind of, he has this legend about him, and people just, I mean, I don't think that I defy you to name another actor who is as universally beloved, who's not Tom Hanks or Jimmy Stewart. I mean, nobody
would have been Will Smith until the last year or two.
Yeah, Will Smith has mismanaged his career, but everybody, and Bill Murray, I don't know that he's ever made a movie that I would say is just a stone cold classic. Maybe Groundhog Day, probably Groundhog Day. But
what about Bob?
Yeah, What About Bob is a perfect little comedy. It's not very ambitious though. You should see it. It's funny. I mean, if you want to see Bill Murray just torture Richard Dreyfuss for 2 hours, which I think we all do, then that's the movie. Richard Dreyfuss plays a pompous ass, and Bill Murray plays the annoying guy that annoys Richard Dreyfuss, which is perfect. Yeah, it's funny. But, I mean, we could probably name half a dozen Bill Murray movies that would be in contention for classic, but Royal Tenenbaums maybe, although that's not really a Bill Murray movie. I don't know.
Scrooge.
Scrooge stinks. I hate Scrooge. What a bad movie. Okay. I promise this is going to lead right up to Bill Murray. I want to talk about a lady named Viola Spolin. She wrote a book called Improvisation for the Theater, which created modern improv, like what you see on, or what everybody kind of thinks of as like the Whose Line Is It Anyway type stuff, the little improv games. You guys know what I'm talking about? Like, yeah. So she wrote a book called Improvisation for the Theater, and her son started an improv company and basically created modern improv, and that was in Chicago, and it was called Second City. And out of Second City comes Alan Alda, Alan Arkin, Harold Ramis, Bill Murray, Gilda Radner, John Candy, John Belushi, Dan Aykroyd, Eugene Levy, Catherine O'Hara, Chris Farley, Tim Meadows, Colin Mockery, Ryan Stiles, Mike Myers, Nia Vardalos, the My Big Fat Greek Wedding, Steve Carell, Jordan Peele, Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Stephen Colbert, Kate McKinnon, that's her name.
Before they were on Saturday Night Live.
They were at Second City. And Second City is an improv troupe, and it basically invented, so this lady wrote a book with these improv exercises, and they weren't necessarily geared for comedy. They were just these little exercises that you could do basically to get yourself in the moment and to get out of the way. What her big philosophy was, anyone can improv on stage. You don't have to be an inspired performer. What you have to do, though, is just be willing to channel yourself purely and sort of not get in your way, not be thinking ahead, like to what I want to do. If you see like a bad improv, or if you see people make fun of improv, like there's an episode of The Office. I'm not a big Office fan, but there's an episode of The Office where Steve Carell's dumb character goes to do improv, and the way that they mock him is by having him make fun of, he's like trying to plan it out and think about the cool things he's going to do ahead of time, and then he keeps pulling a gun on all the other characters and ruining the scenes.
I've seen that episode.
Yeah,
it's actually pretty funny.
It's funny, and it's because it's all about him, and it's all about what he wants to do, and he's in his head about it, and that's bad improv. Good improv is you just let yourself go, and you're just in the scene, and you just let yourself be pure, and you let the things come out that would come out. And that's what all the performers that I've just named have been trained in.
And what was the name of the book again?
Improvisation for the Theater by Viola Spolin. And her son, Paul Sills, founded Second City. And I think you can trace all modern comedy basically to the influence of Saturday Night Live, the influence of Monty Python, and the influence of that book and that style. I mean, just like lots of things coalesced around the 50s and 60s, all that sort of coalesced in the 50s and 60s. And I'm going to just make a huge, broad generalization that's only sort of true, but it gets at what I'm talking about. If you look at old comedy, Henny Youngman, women are crazy these days. Take my wife, please. That kind of stuff. It's very presentational. It's performer over here, audience over here. Performer is performing a thing. Audience is receiving that thing. There's just a 1-to-1 relationship. That's, broadly speaking, old comedy. There's Charlie Chaplin. He's doing a thing. He's falling over. We're laughing at Charlie Chaplin. New comedy, this style of comedy, is much more of a dialogue between the audience and the performer. It's like the difference between a bad preacher and a good preacher. So a bad pastor gets up and presents information about the Bible. Here it is. Here's some theology that you all should believe. A good preacher is in conversation with his congregation. He knows them. And it's not that he's necessarily asking them questions and having them answer back, although our pastor, Jake Menzel, who's right here, does do that a lot. And it can be a good technique. But he's in conversation with their fears, with their expectations, with the things that they bring.
He's adjusting as he goes.
He's adjusting. He's watching them.
He's understanding, I anticipated one thing, but I was wrong. And
right.
I anticipated this would hit my congregation this way, and it feels like it's hitting them a different way because I'm suddenly remembering this thing or whatever.
Yeah. And so if he's in Timbuktu, he's going to do it differently than if he's in Florida, than if he's in India. It's all about, it's not that the truth is subjective, but it's the way that he brings the truth changes a little bit based on what the audience, what the congregation is giving him. Well, I think modern comedy is similar. And it starts with Monty Python, as so many things do. I mean, Monty Python is not just, we're here, we're presenting a thing, and you are responding to the thing. I mean, it does do that, but it also does, we're presenting a thing, and it's funny precisely because you're sitting next to your dad, and he doesn't think it's funny. And now we've given you a catchphrase, which you can take to the school, and some of your friends will know it, and some of your friends will not know it. And we're all in a conversation together. And actually, it's not even that what we just did was funny, but it's funny because it wasn't funny. There's just all these different layers between. It's funny because we're all part of youth culture, because we're speaking to you. There's a relationship. I mean, Monty Python, you don't think of it as being relational. It's very presentational in its style. But in terms of the expectations and the kind of, I'm avoiding this word, but the kind of metatextual.
It's just, I mean, Saturday Night Live is a cheap and watered down version of the same
Precisely.
thing. But it is the fact that if you've ever watched any of these shows, whether it was Saturday Night Live or any Monty Python anything, or old Mad TV or In Living Color or whatever, the fun of it and the funny of it, the moments, the things that you think about as being funny, or even some of the Lorne Michaels movies that are built out of Saturday Night Live characters.
Wayne's World, Tommy Boy, stuff like that.
Yeah, Wayne's World, Tommy Boy, any Adam Sandler movie. What's funny is not the thing in and of itself. It's getting the laughs, drawing the lines, using the catchphrases, having that in common with somebody else in a different context. So you go see it with your buddies or whatever, and then you can laugh about it and keep rehearsing the things, Sunday morning or Monday at school. You can talk about Saturday Night Live, and it's way funnier to talk about it than it was sitting and watching it.
Yeah. And so in that sense, modern comedy is always in dialogue with you as an audience, where Oliver and Hardy, not so much in dialogue with you. They're just like, we are professionals doing a job, and if you paid, then you laugh. That's the transaction. End of story. Obviously, I'm broadly generalizing hugely. The Marx Brothers are a great example of comedians who they have a relationship and they're ahead of the curve in terms of doing, and you could name things on both sides of the equation that don't fit this simplistic. Mm-hmm. But I think you have to understand a lot of modern comedy as being very meta and very in dialogue with its audience. And it explains the success of somebody like Jon Stewart, or the people that are downstream of Jon Stewart, or Stephen Colbert these days. He'll just get on and he won't have jokes. He'll just be like, hey, we all agree that Donald Trump is a terrible president, right? And then everybody laughs. And there's no joke, but there is a shared feeling. There's a relationship that we all want. There is like a thing that we can enter into. And it's just very different. And Monty Python helped pioneer that. And then Saturday Night Live did the kind of watered down, but it was very provocative for American television when you come. I mean, it's why I would say a lot of this stuff actually doesn't work. Like your parents kind of remember it fondly if they grew up with old Saturday Night Live, but you watch like a John Belushi skit now and it's like, what is this? Why did people think Chevy Chase was funny? Like this is like supposed to be revolutionary stuff. And it seems,
why is Animal House so great?
Well, yeah, Animal House is a great example. And the reason Animal House is so beloved by a certain generation is because it was in conversation with that generation and it was saying, hey, authority sucks, right? And college experience is like this, and you all remember this, and you all wanted to lose your virginity in this way. And wouldn't it be fun if you could just be like John Belushi? And don't you know John Belushi? And isn't John Belushi actually you? And there's like all these layers of stuff happening where you watch the great, Harold Lloyd's The Freshman, where he goes to college and it's just like, here's a boy, he's going to college. Some funny things are happening to him. So all of that to explain broadly modern comedy. And I think to sort of begin to get at some sort of thesis statement about Bill Murray, because I love Bill Murray just like anyone, but I always wonder why I love Bill Murray. I'm like, there's nothing intrinsically great about this guy except for that he's great. There's like, what is he doing? You can never catch him doing anything. What is he doing? And I think the answer is more than almost any star that you could name. This is at least my thesis statement. Maybe I'm crazy, but I'm going to start here. I think Bill Murray, he barely seems like he's in conversation with the movie. Like he barely seems like he wants to play a character. It barely seems like he wants to be there oftentimes, but boy, he is in conversation with you as an audience member. And so like the famous opening scene of Ghostbusters is a good example. You barely buy the conceit that he's a college professor, that he's Peter Venkman, but the fact that he's just sort of talking to you like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if you could get this cute co-ed and you could zap this other guy? Don't we all hate like everyone? And don't we all want to sleep with college with cute co-eds?
If you were in my position, wouldn't you do the same thing? Wouldn't you angle to...
And he's a genius at it. And you don't really catch it. It's not like he turns to the camera and arches his eyebrow like Groucho Marx style, but he might as well. It's that same energy where he's marveling to us that he's getting away with what he's getting away with. And we appreciate it. And we're in on the joke. And the co-ed's not in on the joke. And the guy that's getting zapped certainly isn't in on the joke. But we're all in on the joke with Bill Murray. And I think that's what people love about Bill Murray. To this day, you see him in interviews or you watch his movies, and it could even be a more serious movie, but you just like the guy. If you think about the families in your church or the people that you know that are just likable and have a connection with you, sometimes whole families will be like, you'll just say, that's a likable family.
The weird thing about Bill Murray is he's likable on screen, but I don't think that anybody thinks I would like this man in real life, do they? Like, he's the uncle that would make you uncomfortable or that you would just like...
Well, the one thing that I think we all know is that he's lecherous, and I mean, that's part of his persona.
Oh, really?
And
I don't know anything except what I hear about him showing up at people's houses and parties and being their best friend for 2 hours and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the image that he wants. But he's also never really downplayed his 80s movie image, which is, I'm a bad, like, I'm going to zap the other guy. I'm going to get the co-ed. I mean, that Peter Venkman is Bill Murray, and it's the persona that he's always had. Like, he's not interested in running Ghostbusters. He's just interested in making money and sleeping with, I don't know why I remember her character, but Dana Barrett. The, Sigourney Weaver character. Like, he doesn't even want to be there. And you understand that the real Bill Murray didn't really want to be there either, but just wanted to do coke and get hot girls and stuff like that. And I don't know, it's just interesting. I remember, like, he's the number one guy I'd say that I remember my dad loving and my parents loving. And to this day, if I say to my mom, we just recorded a Ghostbusters, she might well say something about, oh, Bill Murray, he's so funny. Or, I mean, it's just short of Jimmy Stewart, Mr. Rogers, or Tom Hanks, you cannot name somebody who's more universally beloved by everybody. But unlike those people, there's no reason why we should love him. I think this is what you were starting to get at, Jake. Like, he doesn't seem like a nice guy.
Doesn't seem like a nice guy.
He doesn't play
like
a nice guy in his movies, actually.
Nope. He plays a pretty nasty guy in most of his movies.
Right. And you wouldn't expect that if you went up to him on the street and asked you for, like, if he was in a good mood, maybe he'd do something whimsical. But if you hit him at the wrong moment, there's no guarantee that he wouldn't just be nasty to you if you asked him for an autograph or saw him. Like, I would not want to meet Bill Murray. I don't think.
So I once watched part of a documentary on an airplane about Bill Murray and his meetings with all these people. And it was kind of a tedious documentary because the point was, man, Bill Murray is so awesome. And I got to meet Bill Murray and I talked to Bill Murray and Bill Murray showed up in my house,
right.
That kind of thing. But it was interesting that everyone in that documentary was like, he was just easy to be around, just chill, actually interested in me as a person. We talked, we connected, he left. None of it was weird. He was like, he didn't mind being a celebrity.
Yeah.
So I don't know entirely. I wonder if he changed some. I wonder if he does like people. I wonder which part is just narcissism. I have no idea. This documentary gave me no grid for assessing that.
I mean, I've spent my whole life trying to solve the mystery of Bill Murray. That's not the main thing that I've done with my life.
The principal thing that Nathan is, I mean, basically, if you fund Warhorn Media, you fund Nathan's investigation into the character of Bill Murray.
I like Egon Spengler. I'm going to rent a dirt farm and just study Bill Murray for the rest of my life and try and stop him from bringing the apocalypse.
This isn't a farm. It's a trap.
Yes.
Brilliant
stuff. I think he's pretty fascinating because I get why people like Mr. Rogers. I mean, I do also get why people like Bill Murray. I like Bill Murray too, but I'm like, what are we all like and why? And yes, he's adopted this kind of Zen clown thing now.
Yeah.
And you hear all these stories, but I'm like, I don't believe for a second that he's sincere about that. I believe that's the image that he wants, but I believe that he has a whimsical sense of humor and he likes to do those things. But do I believe that Bill Murray's a nice guy? No. I believe he might be fun to hang out with if you caught him at the right moment.
You know, when he was fun was in Space Jam.
Yeah. Ivan Reitman.
He's pretty likable in that one.
Yeah. Yeah. No, Bill Murray saved Space Jam as far as, the only reason I'd ever want to go back to Space Jam, I think, is.
Could have been me. Let's go Bulls. Get that little signature Bill Murray cracking the voice right there.
Mm-hmm.
So I found some random interview and this lady got randomly picked up by Bill Murray and given a bear hug.
Mm-hmm.
When she saw him, she was like, "Oh, Bill Murray, my name is this." And then he gives her a bear hug and goes off into the party or wherever they are. So she talked to him on the phone and he said, quote, "I'm not acting like this for the purpose of being exciting. I do it because it's fun. If there's life happening and you run from it, you're not doing the world a favor. You have to engage. It's almost sad that people are not expecting others to engage, that it's a surprise, and if it's someone they recognize, I guess it has an almost supernatural quality, but I've always been like this," end quote. So, anyway, this is interesting to me. It seems like the kind of thing that was from an article in The Guardian called "I'm Nothing But Compost, Bill Murray on Good Friends, Bad Bosses, and Harvey Weinstein."
I don't know. People with personas and private lives, it's one of the most fascinating things to me. And Bill Murray seems like one of the best modern case studies of like, who is this guy really? And I don't think we'll ever know, probably, because he plays his cards pretty close to the chest and or vest. I never know which one is correct or whether they're both correct. But Jake's gonna look.
Haven't we litigated?
Yes, we've definitely litigated this multiple times on the podcast, but I never remember. All right, folks. I know you don't like tangents, but this is an important tangent. We are going to find out whether it's close to the chest or vest.
It's either one.
It's either one. Okay. Because you can hold cards close to either one and play them. Well, let me tell very quickly one of the nastiest Bill Murray stories because it plays directly into the saga of Ghostbusters and the saga of why I hate this film and why I think the ending of this film is evil.
Yep.
Which is the story of Bill Murray's relationship with Harold Ramis. To do that, I need to very quickly let me just close one tab we talked about the state of 21st century comedy. So that was important for this movie that doesn't have a laugh in it. We talked about Bill Murray a little bit. Let me talk about...
Sure it does. Who are you going to call?
Boo. You know what the dumbest thing was? I don't want to be condescending towards people, and it's okay. You know, if people like Dune, for example, it's fine. I'm glad they enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy it. But we sat behind some people that just fell for everything in this movie, and we're like,
We sat in front of them, actually.
Yeah. But
I sat to the left of them.
yeah, there were people in this theater who were like, they just said it. They just said, who you going to call? And it was hard for me not to dislike those people very much. I don't want to be better than humanity. If you like being pandered to.
You want to know if there was a laugh in the movie, it was the moment where J.K. Simmons' character gets ripped in half.
Yeah. Although there again, if that was supposed to be a joke, there's a way to play that joke. Like, there's a way to set that up. Like, here's this character who's going to be important. It's J.K. Simmons. Isn't that exciting? And he's got a thing. Oh, he's dead. Like, there's a way to actually do that. But they threw it away. They so threw it away that you didn't know whether it was intentional or whether we were even supposed to recognize that it was J.K. Simmons under the Colonel Sanders get up. Anyway.
I didn't, actually.
Yeah. I mean, J.K. Simmons got his Oscar for Juno, which is Jason Reitman's big film. But Ben, you look like a man with more Bill Murray research to share or something.
No, I don't. I'm sorry. I'm just mulling all this over. It's sparking a train in my mind. I don't know what
Sparking
to say.
a train.
Yeah,
sparking a train. You guys know sparking that train?
Yeah, don't cross the streams of that train. Well, is the train going to come into the thought station where the conductor will verbalize it?
It's an interesting article. What I was quoting from. It's just Murray. I mean, the writer talks about his reputation as someone difficult to work with,
right?
And temperamental, as well as what he is now,
right?
And he maintains, I never changed. Just whether or not people knew how to work with me.
Well,
I mean, I don't know. It's
to me that's the kind of thing that a narcissist would say.
I mean, I believe it.
I mean, I believe it, but.
I believe that he's a narcissist.
Yeah, I believe,
or I could.
If you want to say,
I believe that he gets along with some people and doesn't with others, and hasn't really changed all that much, and doesn't really care.
Yeah, I believe all that.
That's a function of his narcissism too.
Yeah, what I don't believe is that that's the function of some kind of higher consciousness, Zen sort of Bill Murray.
But that's what people. That's why. I mean, that was why I stopped watching that stupid documentary. Is because that's what people believed that he was. You know,
right?
He's an avatar for a higher spirit of love or something, or flow, or being in the moment, or
yeah. Bill Murray's just chill and he goes with it, and everything comes to him because he doesn't care. He's got.
Don't you wish you were like that?
Don't you wish you could be like that?
Don't you wish more people in your life were like that?
No, I don't.
Don't you wish more celebrities were like that?
It's okay for one Bill Murray to get away with it, but if everyone tried to do that, then the roads wouldn't run and the traffic lights wouldn't change and we wouldn't have policemen and the world would be a very sad place. So
what the movie that just came to my mind is the other character is Jimmy Stewart's character in Harvey.
Mm-hmm.
Just think if everyone were like him and his puka.
Yeah, which Harvey, me and my wife just watched it for the first time.
Never seen it.
I hate it. I think it's maybe just wicked. I don't know. Like it really wants to tell you that we should all be Harvey, or we shouldn't all be the imaginary bunny, but we should all just give ourselves to useless fantasies. And it basically does make the argument that we should all be Bill Murray. And it doesn't ask the question of what would happen to the roads, what would happen to crime, what would happen to society if we were all just allowed to be Bill Murray.
Turn that off, Karen. The man's sick. Trust me. That's all I know of Harvey. It's seen in Field of Dreams.
Field of Dreams, yeah.
That is a movie we should watch soon, because I think you put it in conversation with this conversation, you get some interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Harvey?
Yeah.
Well, we're going to do another Jimmy Stewart. We got Shop Around the Corner, so I mean, we're going to fill in a lot of Jimmy Stewart stuff, so
why not Harvey?
Why not Harvey sometime soon? But that'll be 2022 at the very earliest, folks.
All right.
Okay, we've got so many tabs open, so I want to get to Harold Ramis and Bill Murray's breakup, but let me get there by way of talking about Ghostbusters a little bit more. So, yeah, Ramis wrote this. Well, so Ghostbusters started as a Dan Aykroyd script. Dan Aykroyd loves the occult, very strange guy, interested in all this stuff. Wrote this crazy script treatment. I think it was hundreds of pages long. I might be exaggerating a little bit, but it was long. It was crazy. It involved time traveling inner space. Like the Ghostbusters was this organization where people traveled through time and space trying to bust ghosts. It was just like this crazy script, way too expensive. They could never make it. That's just Dan Aykroyd. He is as weird as his characters and as sincere about it. If you see him in interviews, he comes across as Ray Stantz or whatever that guy's name is. Like he is just that guy and always was, and has enough money to just be that guy. And he is an example of someone who's eccentric and zen and not very lovable. So I guess the world doesn't just always love people when they're zen. You have to also have the magical gift of likability, with which Bill Murray just has and Dan Aykroyd does not. But anyway, the script ends up in the lap of Ivan Reitman, who is a huge producer. He produced Animal House. He's like the comedy guy in the 80s, and he's responsible for a lot of things that people remember fondly. Meatballs, Stripes, Ghostbusters, Legal Eagles, Twins, Kindergarten Cop, Dave, Jr., like all the kind of big high concept 90s schlock. Yeah, short of Ghostbusters, I don't know that there's anything I would consider to be close to a classic in the list that I just gave. But Ivan Reitman was the man for comedy at the time, and he often worked with Harold Ramis. Harold Ramis, like I said, came out of Second City, just like Bill Murray did, comes out of this school of improv. But what Harold Ramis always said is that if you know Harold Ramis as a personality before he died, he's very, for lack of a better frame, Jewish, very reserved and neurotic and verbal, but retiring. And what Harold Ramis always said is he loved working with people like Bill Murray because he would come up with all the crazy ideas. I mean, Harold Ramis wrote Animal House, so he's got quite the id, but he didn't like to express it. He liked to have people like Belushi or people like Bill Murray play the crazier characters, and then he would play the more reserved characters. So he writes Animal House, which by some weird fluke of fate doesn't have Bill Murray, even though it kind of feels like it should. And Animal House really changes comedy and changes frat boy culture, and is just a hugely important movie that we will never do on this podcast, because why would we want to? And also, we'll never do it. Then he does Meatballs, writes that with Murray. I think he's in Meatballs. I don't remember. Does Caddyshack, directs and writes it with Murray. Pretty famous Bill Murray performance. That movie stinks, but Bill Murray is pretty funny in it as the groundskeeper who's in the eternal battle with the gopher or whatever.
Wrote Groundhog Day.
Yeah, wrote and directed Groundhog Day, but wrote Stripes. So Harold Ramis is this great writer. He's a script doctor. He's also a pretty good performer. But when Aykroyd turns in this crazy Ghostbusters draft, they're just like, let's get Ramis to like actually make this something that we can do. And so Ramis brings it into New York, makes it the story of guys starting a business, which is just so perfect. In the 80s, you know, the economy is booming. Everybody's starting a business. It's in New York. And Ramis is, I think, more responsible than Aykroyd for the tone that we all love about Ghostbusters. And the central joke of the movie, which is you have these three schlubby idiots that are just workaday Joes that happen to be involved in all this paranormal stuff. That whole juxtaposition is something that Ramis brought to it. Dan Aykroyd just wanted to make a crazy ghost movie. But then they get Bill Murray, and he comes in, and they don't really have like a completed script. And boy, can you tell if you watch Ghostbusters as a adult. I mean, it's such a shambling movie, and the mythology is so simple. It's like, don't cross the streams, something bad will happen. And then at the end, they're like, do cross the streams, something good will happen. And I just described the whole plot. I mean, like, Dan Aykroyd probably says some gobbledygook to explain all that. And 6-year-old Jake probably thought like it made sense and was a really cool adventure conceit and stuff. But there's just like,
it's no different than if you see yourself, you might disrupt the space-time continuum.
Yeah.
But it's about on that level of, it's actually Egon who gives a science-y explanation of how it'll rip apart it could potentially rip apart the fabric of the universe.
But it's not connected to like the characters achieving anything or learning anything. I mean, Ghostbusters is essentially a movie without a third act. It's got a really funny first act and fun first act where they set up business. And then it's got a second act where their business grows and this dumb bureaucrat ruins everything, and that all makes sense. But then the third act is just like, let's throw some special effects, and we have a funny gag with the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, but we have absolutely nowhere further for these characters who basically aren't characters to go. I mean, there's nothing left in the tank. It's really ramshackle, but it's funny and it works because the performers are charismatic. The Stay Puft Marshmallow Man is a transcendently awesome special effects gag and just like the perfect ending to that movie. I mean, I'm not trying to criticize it. I think Ghostbusters works. I just want to make the case that it's lightning in a bottle, and it doesn't work because they tried all that hard or anyone had really great ideas. It just worked because
some things just work.
Some things just work. Usually, I mean, people
most of the time they don't, and you forget about them.
Yeah,
and sometimes they do.
But this one, it works. But it's all just built on a really strong premise. But then they don't actually do anything with that premise. The premise is, what if three schlubby guys had to deal with Victorian style supernatural threats? That's a really funny juxtaposition, and that gives the movie enough gas to make it across the finish line. But
let's put them in a firehouse and let's treat them like volunteer firefighters sitting around smoking cigarettes.
Yeah, and I just remember every time Ecto 1 went out with its little siren, my dad thought that was so funny. Like, just the premise alone of these goofballs in their stupid car, like,
it's a hearse.
Yeah, it's hilarious. And Ray's excited about the pole, and I mean, I'm not criticizing.
You guys, did you see this pole? This place is great. We'll take it. You got Egon and Bill Murray thinking they were haggling or negotiating, and Ray, I don't know. Dan Aykroyd's actually pretty lovable in the role of Ray Stantz.
He is, because the joke's on him instead of him. Yeah, it's like making fun of who Dan Aykroyd actually is. This guy's a dork.
I couldn't help it. I thought of the one thing that it's the Stay Puft Marshmallow. I, Ray, am Vigo.
So it's a movie that works. It just works. It has a great premise. It has a great incongruity. Comedy should always be built on. I just want to drive this point home again, because they didn't bother to do this in the new one. Like, you can't just have some funny lines. You have to have a funny premise. And three schlubby guys bust ghosts and treat it like a workaday job is a funny premise. Just like the three anarchic Marx brothers end up at a high society function where you'd never expect them. The opera. That's a funny premise. Doesn't take long to think of it, but it's a funny premise that you could build a comedy around. So Ghostbusters has that, and then it has the wonderful comedic garnish of all of Bill Murray's little throwaway lines and improvs, and he's going to pull out a Crunch bar and give it to Egon Spangler to, give him a cookie so he'll go away. And it turns out he treasured that Crunch bar for 30 years and kept it in his stupid Proton. But it's such a ramshackle movie. Like, Ernie Hudson shows up because they need a black guy. He has no character. They don't give him anything to do. Ernie Hudson's cashed lots of checks, and that they keep trying to act like he was a character that we all remember, like the beloved Ernie
Hudson. A great moment in Ghostbusters 2 where, for whatever reason, the subway singles him out. Winston.
Yeah.
And then he gets frozen on the tracks.
You're just making me want to see Ghostbusters 2, which is not something that a friend would do to a friend, but...
Sorry, man. It is what happens. And he stands there and just, yells the whole time. And he also breaks up the fight between Ray and Egon.
It's true.
Yeah, he does things in Ghostbusters too.
He does.
So he gets stuff. He's pretty awesome in that movie. I liked him a lot as a kid.
Yeah, and kids like him in the first one. But if you look at what he's actually given to do, it's like they forgot to write a part for him. Or they cut it out or something. Who knows? It's just a weird ramshackle movie. So anyway, all of this is...
no, he's the guy. No, he's the guy who needed a job and gets sucked into a bunch of crap and is like, why did I take this job? And because Egon and Ray are true believers.
Right.
Bill Murray's running it as a scam. And then Winston is the guy who's like, I answered a call for an ad and now I thought I was just doing a workaday job. And
you're right. He brings some normal guy perspective to it. He's just like, but then that doesn't, well, anyway. I like Ghostbusters 1. I think the reason I keep doubling down on it's a ramshackle movie is because it didn't really deserve to be a franchise. There's not a lot of meat on that bone. I think that's the point I'm trying to get to here.
I'm just going to keep fighting it because I think, man, whatever they stumbled into had some cool stuff. Ecto 1 was cool. The ghosts were cool. The traps, the proton packs, all of the stuff of ghost busting, the little, stuff, the instruments that they use, all of that stuff was cool stuff. It was cool, down to their stupid little jumpsuits with the black name tags with the red letters. All that stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
Was cool stuff. And that stuff was stuff that was part of a world that they built on accident or not. And you wanted to play in that world and live in that world as a kid. And you wanted the proton pack and the thing. And that's why it was also a successful cartoon show.
Yeah. And that's where our paths diverge because I didn't. But I understand that lots of people did, and that's fine. And your point is a solid one, which is they created, there are people that watch this new one and they hear the crackle of the electricity as they turn on the proton pack, and it just speaks to them. And that's not me. And it's okay if that's someone else. I get that. But also they keep acting like we have characters that people cared about and we have a mythology that people cared about. And no, you didn't have characters that people cared about. People like Bill Murray, people could barely name Peter Venkman. I mean, unless they're a kid like you, but like my dad loves Ghostbusters. He would never in a million years remember the name
Peter Venkman. Ray Stantz, Egon Spengler, and Winston Zedmore.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's just the movie where Bill Murray does funny things while ghost special effects happen. That is what it's like for most people.
That's right.
For your casual fan. Anyway, Bill Murray and Harold Ramis. This is what I'm getting to.
Yeah.
So they make 6 movies together. In certain circles, they would not.
Harold Ramis, the actual star of the first Ghostbusters film. I'm just gonna keep kicking against stuff you say. I guess I don't know.
I know. I agree with that. I mean, there's a reason
he's the perfect straight man in that movie.
Mm-hmm. And he's funny. I mean, second to Bill Murray, he's the funniest. And for kids, he's relatable. If you're the science kid, if you're the nerd, if you're the geek, like you'd rather be Harold Ramis than stupid Aykroyd,
I once had a Slinky.
Yeah. He's terrified beyond the capacity of... No. Is Aykroyd terrified beyond the capacity of rational thought?
No, that's Egon.
That's Egon. Yeah. Yeah, I think of that line all the time. Anytime I'm terrified beyond the capacity of rational thought. So Ramis and Murray are best friends. Or I don't know if they're best friends, but they're good friends. They do all these movies together. Murray is able to sort of be the unrepressed side of Ramis and perform all this stuff. And Ramis comes with good ideas, but he also knows if I don't have a good idea, we can just work together, come up with something while they're lighting the scene, and it's going to be funny. And a lot of what you love about Bill Murray and remember from all that run of classic comedies is just Ramis and Murray working together. And then they have a huge falling out during the making of their classic and the ultimate movie that they ever made together, which is, of course, Groundhog Day. And Ramis talked a lot about it. Bill Murray doesn't talk that much about it, but basically Bill Murray was going through a divorce at the time and things just got nasty and Bill Murray was being a prima donna and he wanted things his way and he would get mad and chew out people on the set and just all the nastiest things that you would assume about someone like Bill Murray, the kind of the darker side of his persona was coming out, and he wanted to make the movie more moody and more existential and more leaning into what's interesting about the whole premise of Groundhog Day. And Harold Ramis wanted to do those things, yes, but he also wanted to do a mainstream romantic comedy. And I think people love that movie. I kind of love that movie. I think like it's a nice mix of those two sensibilities. Actually, it's a good existential movie, but it's also a fun romantic comedy. And I think
I watched it as a kid and I felt I've never actually admitted this to anybody or talked about it or thought about it. I felt such weird tension about that movie that I really hated it. I had a visceral reaction to it as a kid.
Because of the existential plight of Bill Murray, like the horror of what he's going through?
It wasn't just I think it was how he or his character responded to all of it.
Mm-hmm.
By playing God?
Yeah. No, not the plot. The edge. Mm-hmm. The edge to Bill Murray in his character.
It's an
incredible edge.
The anger, the constant, steady anger of that character.
Phil Connors.
Of Phil Connors. Even at the point of redemption, the anger is just seething with anger. I felt that so much, and I hated it. I hated living there for that whole movie, and I've never ever been tempted to go back to it for a second. And I've always wondered, well, I guess I should go back to it. I guess I was just a kid, but I just have such a visceral, like, Bill Murray is angry for an entire movie, hates everyone, is going to kill people, like,
well, see,
and then has to play a trick on himself and everybody else that actually he's going to be grateful and do the right thing in order to get out of it. But it's just a trick because he's still as angry as ever. Like, that's just the way that I think about that movie. So I just don't like it. I understand everybody loves it. I understand I'm probably wrong about it, but I've always felt that way about that movie.
See, I think that you're absolutely right. And you're putting your finger on one of the things that makes the movie so great. I mean, it's like Jimmy Stewart in It's a Wonderful Life. There is this undercurrent of just a person who's trapped, and it really kind of gets at it in a profound way. What it doesn't do that It's a Wonderful Life does, and the reason why it's not quite a top tier classic, is Bill Murray cannot quite bring the plane in for a landing when he is asked to be sweet at the end. You do not quite believe it.
I remember believing it last time I actually saw the whole thing.
Yeah, I think it works well.
Buying the arc, but that's interesting.
Yeah,
what Jake said.
When did that movie come out?
Then I want to say 90. I think I have it right here.
Early 90s.
It's early 90s for sure.
I guarantee you, I saw that movie out on a new Blockbuster new release, and so I didn't see it in theaters. I guarantee you, I saw it first week that it would have showed up in Premiere Video, actually.
Well, probably 94 then, because it looks like it came out 93.
Okay, so 93, 94, I would have been 9 or 10.
That's an interesting time to see the movie, because it's not a laugh out loud funny movie like you're expecting if you're like kind of a Ghostbusters or some of his more...
My parents have been divorced 3 or 4 years. My dad's just remarried, and I'm in, 5th grade-ish?
Sounds like...
Which is a period of time where I wanted to have nothing to do with my mom, and I would have seen this at her house.
I could see how.
Sounds like the perfect time to watch a movie about an angry, bitter man who's trapped, and living the same day over and over again, partly by his own bitterness.
And I hated that movie.
And has to come to a zen existential acceptance of...
I've never wanted to watch it since.
Yeah.
And I haven't.
Well, this is awesome. I wish we were talking about Groundhog Day. We're going to have to do it sometime soon, because that's a fun thing to talk about. Yep. Let's trap Jake again in Pixkawani Falls or wherever that place is.
Puxatani.
Puxatani, yeah.
I think I was kind of the opposite. I responded to the anger, and I loved the fantasy of being able to take out my anger. All the suicidal stuff. I mean, this is maybe getting a little dark, but
I remember
the fact that he lives such a consequence-free life. I don't think I was old enough that I responded in a bad way to the fact that he can trick women into sleeping. Like, he gets all her details and then comes back the next go around and is like, "Hey," and then they sleep together. It wasn't that, but just the fact that he could steal money, live the life he wanted, play piano, learn to play piano, master all these skills to try and win Andy McDowell and all this. Like, the fantasy
live, die, repeat, baby.
Yeah, the fantasy of live, die, repeat was a lot of fun. But I don't know. It'd be fun I think we'd probably find that movie pretty problematic if we watched it, but I think we might also enjoy it. It'd be fascinating to see what Jake thought of it all these years later. So I wish we were talking about that instead of Ghostbusters Afterlife. Anyway, Bill Murray is an angry man. Little Jake was picking up on something true, because Bill Murray was at his angriest when they were making that movie. So angry that they got done with, Ramis and him started talking through other people. Ramis, the screenwriter, would go and work on things. And famously, like, Ramis and Murray would work on things together, and they'd punch up a scene and come up with fun improvs and stuff. But none of that happened. Their relationship fell to pieces, not because Ramis was being a jerk, but because Murray was angry. And Murray would not speak to Harold Ramis after that. And so we never got a Ghostbusters 3. The studio, of course, was always pitching Ghostbusters 3 while Ramis was alive, and everybody was pulling for it. But Murray and Ramis had this falling out, which was definitely, everybody agrees, Bill Murray's fault. And Bill Murray refused to talk to Harold Ramis for years and years and years and years. And Ramis gave all kinds of interviews and talked about how sad he was and, just said, I want my friend Bill back, but he won't talk to me. And it was pretty famous, one of those famous kind of Hollywood feuds. The story has a somewhat happy ending, and maybe this helps with Ghostbusters Afterlife, but I don't really think it does. So Ramis gets autoimmune inflammatory vasculitis and is dying of an infection thereof and can hardly speak, is on his way out the door. Brian Doyle Murray, who's an actor and you would recognize and plays the mayor, for example, in Groundhog Day. Bill's brother says, you got to go see Harold before he dies. And so Bill Murray does one of his, I'm sorry, I don't buy this. I do buy it, I guess, but if you hear a little edge in my voice, maybe you'll understand why. Bill Murray does one of his Bill Murray things. He shows up with a police escort and a bunch of donuts at Ramis's house.
Oh, shut up.
And apparently they have a sweet conversation. Ramis can hardly talk, but they have some laughs. They eat some donuts.
According to who?
According to Ramis's daughter.
Okay.
And so they reconnect like days before Ramis has died. After Bill Murray has held a grudge against this man for 20 years or 30 years, from 94 to, or from 93 to 2014 when Ramis died. So last minute, Bill Murray goes and clears his conscience a little bit.
Clears his record.
Yeah. And then
for being cynical.
And then I feel cynical about it too. And then the same, in case people hadn't picked up on the undertones of my presentation of the story. And then the same year, Ramis gets like a shout out from the Academy Awards or something like that. And Bill Murray is a presenter and has some nice things to say about Harold Ramis. But, and I hope that they had a nice conversation, and I have no reason to believe that they didn't have a nice conversation. But you'll see, I think everyone will sympathize with me when I say the ending of this movie is such a word that I can't say. And I'm only glad that they didn't push it more in terms of like Peter Venkman.
Buddy, they pushed it hard.
But they pushed it as hard as they could.
It was nauseating.
I think that's...
It was cringe. It was cringy. It was so cringy.
Let me wrap up context and then we can talk more directly about this movie. So the only other thing I wanted to say about the making of this movie, it is Jason Reitman. He's the son of Ivan. And we already kind of gave the context. But Reitman, if you don't know, he's an indie director who was fairly beloved. Here's the other thing, the suspect. He had 3 pretty big indie hits with Juno, which was pretty universally beloved, not by me, but by many people. Juno has some fun moments. Did you see Juno, Ben?
No, never did.
He did Thank You for Smoking, which was a pretty good movie, as I recall. Very anti-smoking, obviously, but funny. And Into the Air, which was a good movie with George Clooney. And he did another one that people tend to like, which is Young Adult with Charlize Theron. I have not seen that. But then he had a few box office bombs, a few things that didn't quite take off. And it just feels a little convenient that he chose to do a Ghostbusters movie just now. And that's all I'll say about that. His career really needed a surefire hit right now. Whether he,
fail.
Yeah. It's not a fail.
The box office isn't agreeing with me. Rotten Tomatoes isn't agreeing with me, but
Rotten Tomatoes is kind of agreeing with you, but not as much as it should.
The critics are at 60-something%, 67%, which is positive, and audiences were at 94 last time I checked.
94.
That was still closer to opening day. Would have been Thursday or Friday, so it would have been super fans, but
yeah. Well, let's talk about this.
What's it at now, Ben?
Movie.
Getting there. Still getting there.
While Ben gets there, folks, I make no apology for talking a long time about Bill Murray and about all these different things because they're so much more interesting than
95%
the movie we're about to talk
score,
about.
62% critic score.
Well, it makes me despair for humanity. The fact that people are willing to, like, here's your swill, audience, enjoy, and they're willing to just be pandered to in this way. I mean, this movie is pretty dumb and pretty bad.
It's grave robbery.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's such a disservice to Harold Ramis, to say the very least.
Yeah, I have a bunch of metaphors. I can't use them.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I guess we can explain. Spoilers! at the end of the movie, let's just talk about this first because it's far and away the most interesting thing. So about 2/3 of the way through the movie, they just give up. Paul Rudd stops playing a character and starts playing a goofy guy in a Walmart commercial.
Yep.
And then after that, the movie sucked. And it already sucked before that, but they just stopped making a movie. They started just like doing riffs on old, hey, there's Gozer.
Well, hey, the first Ghostbusters was a ramshackle collection of scenes and gags, Nathan, and so are we.
Yeah, except for we forgot the gags. I mean, if they had some gags.
It's just callbacks.
Did you not see the Marshmallow Man, Nathan, in Walmart?
Oh, man. Did I not laugh at the Marshmallow Man?
There was one in a blender. I don't know if you saw this part, Nathan, but he got gooped.
Yes, it was most amusing.
They're all very gleeful about it.
They all were, yeah.
Yeah, so roast me, melt me.
As a critic, I was, there's no way Stay Puft stays in business after their mascot. They're gonna change their mascot after their mascot terrorizes New York in 1984. Just in universe, it's very silly that.
Well, everything is ridiculous. Like, oh, we've all forgotten that the New York was taken over by a giant marshmallow man, and that these guys took the Statue of Liberty on a walk through New York Harbor. It's like, what the heck?
Right. It's so bad.
We don't believe this is real.
This movie's so lazy. But it ends with like the bad guy's about to kill our heroes. Oh no! And then who should show up but the original Ghostbusters? But even that's not quite enough. And then who should show up but the CGI ghost of Harold Ramis, just like I and everyone predicted would happen, but hoped they would have enough taste
to not do as on the nose as they did.
I mean, they have like Egon Spengler's ghost through the movie, and he's like motivating things and moving things around, and you know it's him. And
it was a bold choice to come out and have the first pre-credit scene of the movie be, here's the shadowy old Egon, and we're going to kill him on screen, and then we're going to have him manifest as a ghost and let you know that this is a Harold Ramis haunted film. Bold stroke. I thought, well, that's interesting.
I mean, I think you could do it, though. If you had something interesting to say about Spengler.
I reserved judgment. I was like, well, okay, well, that's bold. That's like, in some ways, it gave me some hope. It's like, we're not pretending here. We're not going to like try to sucker punch you at the end. This is a Harold Ramis ghost story. And so now we've told you. And so it's all going to be about how we show you in the end. I respected that more bold turn of choice. Like I didn't expect it, but I respected the move. But
if you're going to do it, I guess that's the way to do it. But then what you don't do is have CGI Harold Ramis just show up and fully be shown and linger through a good 5 minutes of screen time, which is forever in screen time.
All kinds of forever of just like staring at CGI ghost Harold Ramis's face.
And he's not going to say anything, which is kind of awkward in and of itself in terms of the story.
He's not going to do anything but smile at everybody.
And so he's going to like reconnect with his estranged daughter, and he's going to commend his granddaughter, and then he's going to look at the original Ghostbusters. He's going to have a moment with every character that he needs to have. And then
he's going to cross over.
Yeah, and then he crosses over, and like his pixie dust flies into the sky, and then the title appears for Harold.
Yeah.
And it's just and I think that they mechanically extracted a few tears from me. I must say,
they did.
Wonderworld 1984
Not from me.
Extracted. Well, you're better.
I'm a robot.
Wonderworld 1984.
Wonderworld 1984.
What in the world are you talking about?
The year that Ghostbusters was released. It was a Wonderworld, and it had that woman. You remember?
Did she fight the Nazis in her underwear?
She fought the Nazis, but
it took me a minute to figure out what we were messing up here.
But she didn't fight the Nazis in her underwear in this one. She fought the Cheeto mascot in her underwear. And she also fought the Mandalorian in his underwear. And he had his son or daughter or something like that. And they were like, I just needed you to be my dad. And that extracted a tear out of me. I didn't need you to be a supervillain that gave wishes to the world in this crappy movie. I just needed my dad. And that extracted a tear out of me. So I'm a sucker for dad stuff. But I predicted, by the way, that I'm not happy to be right, by the way. I mean, maybe I am a little bit, but I would much rather have a good Ghostbusters
It would
movie.
extract tears and you would be angry.
That they'd bring back CGI Harold Ramis, that it would extract tears, and that it would suck and we would be angry about it. And that's exactly what happened.
Yep, you nailed it.
I mean, that was an easy prediction. It doesn't make me
pretty easy.
much of a... I'm not... is there a psychic character in Ghostbusters?
Well, yeah. All the people guessing the cards.
Yeah, I'm not the guy sitting next to the pretty co-ed in Ghostbusters.
Or the... Oh, there's some cameo in Ghostbusters 2. Is it John Lovitz? No, he plays...
He's in it, but he's just like Dana Barrett's workmate or something, isn't he?
Yeah. No,
that's that guy, Peter McCullough or whatever his name is.
I think it might be John Lovitz I don't know, whatever. When they go to get Peter Venkman, he's not a professor this time. He's got a TV show.
Yeah.
And the dude's gonna he's predicting the end of the world and, all the details and that are going to come true later in the thing, whatever. Anyhow, sorry, I'm just pulling Ghostbusters knowledge for no reason.
Well, no, it's proving that you have the most right to hate this movie because it was made for you and you still hate it because you don't like cynically being pandered to. And that's all this movie did. And the ending was pretty gross.
I didn't even feel pandered to. I felt...
You brought me some pig swell, but you didn't actually make me eat it.
Yeah, I didn't even want this. I'm not a snot. For all of the pulls I'm giving you here, it's not magic. The world of Ghostbusters is not magical. It's cool. It's fun stuff, but it's not going to evoke the same feeling as switching on a lightsaber or something like that. Switching on a proton pack was never like that.
No,
they were comedies.
This movie sure...
They were still meant to be funny. It just wasn't epic.
This movie sure acts like, we're going to switch on the proton pack. It's a thing we've been waiting for all these years.
Well, it does buy into its own Spielberg reboot premise, doesn't it?
Yes, it sure does.
All the way to the hilt of this is Indiana Jones with his whip, except it's a proton pack, but who cares?
But it's not, because Ghostbusters was a ramshackle comedy with a silly mythology that didn't actually spend a lot of time on proton packs. They were just the thing. I mean, yeah, they had cool toys. Jake played with the Happy Meals. I admit that people have a connection to it, but now that we
and then you get further into this movie, and at the point where it ditches the story, and it's like, well, actually, we were telling you this is a nostalgic mythology that's consistent with real characters, and now what we'd like to tell you is no one cares about anything, but we'll have some scenes of kids fighting ghosts and CGI Harold Ramis. It stops trying so hard.
You wonder why they bothered trying in the first place.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you. So here's one thing.
The amount of elbow grease that goes into things that they don't pay off or don't care about by the time it's over is just why did we waste all that time setting all of the... I just don't understand.
These are characters who matter.
I don't know that I could...
Except now they don't.
I don't know that we could name a movie that spends more time carefully developing characters than it just throws away.
Then it throws away.
Here's the mom. Here's her deal. Here's what she's going. Who cares? She's the mom.
Jurassic World does some of that.
Jurassic World is somewhat similar to this,
but not as egregious.
Here's Finn Wolfhard. He wants the girl, and it's he's.
Now he's got the girl.
Yeah, and now she likes him for
and now she's one of the dogs. And now what?
Here's the little science nerd, and she's got a problem relating to people. Except
now she's got a friend, and she's really charming.
And she doesn't care anyway.
Yeah,
and she's fine.
Here's Paul Rudd. He's got playing a character. Oh, now he's in an advertisement for Walmart where we didn't even give him to. I think, as you pointed out, Jake, when we were standing in the theater, we forgot to write a scene, so we're just like, "Hey, Paul Rudd, do something," and then he comes in and he's whistling, doo-doo-doo.
He does a little dance. He's like, "Yeah, Baskin Robbins. Yeah. That's what I want."
It was fun to watch him.
I appreciated him trying to bring something.
I was so happy anytime. I don't love Paul Rudd or Ant-Man.
That whole Walmart scene just exists to give you some cute merchandising and trailer opportunities for the Baby Stay Puft guys.
Yeah, you liked
it.
You liked Baby Groot, didn't you? You pigs. Here's some.
And then Disney doubled down and gave you Baby Yoda. So guess what we're gonna do?
Here's Baby Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
And then you've got the mom. What's mom's characteristic? She's a loser with a heart of gold. No. She's just a loser. Well, is she a good parent? Well, no. Does she have any marketable skills? Not that we learn of. Why does Paul Rudd want her? Well, he says he loves dumpster fires. Why don't we just give him the benefit of the doubt? He actually is just a loser, too. And together, they're actually kind of gross. And when the movie degrades them, it's just falling to their level.
Right.
That's how it feels, and that's actually a really gross feeling.
Yeah, it is.
For a kid's movie to not have a parent who's a good parent, or even a father figure-ish guy.
Or even a parent that you can kind of push against. Like, none of us love the trope of the bad authority figure that just sucks and is there to make all the wrong choices. But at least that's a thing. Like, it's a story beat.
It is a story. And then Paul Rudd's going to make this pervy joke about, don't worry, maybe your little awkward daughter will grow up to become a pole dancer.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's just really, that's a little beyond the pale. It's gross. Come on, movie.
Yeah.
Is that, I guess that's a callback to Spielberg era gross jokes in kids' movies or something?
Yeah. Boy. Yeah.
We need this movie to feel funny and snappy, and we came up with a bad joke.
I actually didn't mind a lot of the dialogue in Acts 1 and 2, just as kind of dramedy.
It was
banter and
dramedy.
dramedy.
It was snappy. It was I was like, movie, I kind of trust you. Are you going somewhere?
Yeah, but then the Walmart scene, it's just like, no, we're not.
Going to Walmart.
yeah, that's where we're going. Yes, we're glad you asked. Walmart is where we're going.
What were you going to say, Jim?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, man.
And then
I didn't trust it. I didn't. From the beginning, I came in really excited and hopeful. I gave it the opening scene.
The Spangler runs through the cornfields scene.
Yep, I gave it Spangler runs through the cornfields. I gave it the Spangler's got a trap. I gave it I know that this is where we're going to end. We're going to end on the front porch with his daughter holding up the trap, and she's going to make it work with the help of his ghost. I gave it that we're going to kill Harold Ramis's character on screen with a scene from the original Ghostbusters movie. I gave it and we're going to be able to track his character with Egon's famous little instrument that he carried around. And then we jumped to the apartment, and by the time we got on the road, I think it was already actively losing me.
I never gave it anything, but once we met the characters, I kept sort of trying, and me and the movie made an uneasy agreement. Like, you haven't really got me, movie, but we'll see. I don't know. Maybe this is going somewhere. Like, these kind of feel like real characters, and I don't know. They kind of suck. Like, they're not that well
McKenna Grace is a good actress, and that comes through. And Finn Wolfhard's a good actor, but
boy, did they not give him anything to do.
They didn't give him anything to do.
Man,
and
but they
totally
pretend
wasted
they do.
him.
Well, they pretend they do.
Well, it really felt like we want to make this McKenna Grace's character's story, but she needs serious backup. And so we're pulling in a ringer.
And we're doing an 80s riff, so let's get Stranger Things kid, because we have no more imagination than that. So here's our ringer.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing about it is I just think I get tired of complaining about this stuff, but it's worth complaining about every time. Wokeism just ruins movies, because the obvious arc for Finn Wolfhard is he has to earn the girl by like saving her or manning up or doing something. Becoming someone, having a character arc where he goes from boy to man.
Why does the dopey dweeb 15-year-old actually get the pretty cute girl? There's no reason whatsoever.
Well, there's an obvious reason that movies have been giving us since the silent era, which is he punches out the bully. It's the George McFly story.
Right.
He grabs a proton pack and does something manly, and then she's like, "Aw," but we can't do that story anymore because that's sexist and that's making her into a damsel in distress and all that sort of stuff. And so that just means we can't have a story. We can't even have a reason why she falls in love with him. We're just going to have her do some Zendaya stuff, and now she likes him for some reason. That's not actually an arc. Like, they forgot to... It's baffling to me. Like, somebody had to sit down at a word processor and process words and put them on a page. And you would think as they did that, just naturally, they'd think, I have a character and he's going to have a progression where he starts somewhere and he ends somewhere. But instead they like, even the original Ghostbusters has, as ramshackle as I've spent a lot of time arguing it is, it's like, we understand Bill Murray is in love or in lust or in whatever with Sigourney Weaver, and he is either going to get her at the end or he isn't. Like there's...
Yep. And if we make another one, we've got to come up with a reason why they never ended up together actually.
Right.
In the first place.
The original ramshackle Ghostbusters is a masterpiece of character and of story, just because naturally people did those things. But it's this weird thing. We saw it in Shang-Chi too. It's like they don't actually bother to put together stories. And I think a lot of it is wokeism. I think you can't do a lot of simple story beats like guy defeats villain and wins girl. You have to take a lot of pieces off the table these days, which means you can't just do certain things that would have been super obvious. I think that's one reason. But I also think there's just something so formless and so lazy about modern film it baffles me. It's weird. Like Jason Reitman's obviously a thoughtful guy. Everyone has standard intelligence. How do you sit down and write a script where you don't ask the question, who is Finn Wolfhard and what is he doing? And how will that connect with an audience?
Who is this character that we are writing for Finn Wolfhard?
Yeah.
So that we can justify casting Finn Wolfhard.
I mean,
so that we can cover our butts with this daughter character that I really care about.
Yeah.
And how do we make it so that he can step in and be more if she doesn't have the chops to play this role? And how do we make it so we can dial him back but still justify his existence if she really shines the way that we want her to?
Right.
That conversation had to have happened somehow, but it really doesn't look like it did.
Well, she came in and she just knocked it out of the park, and she's great. I mean, she's really strong.
They didn't write her much of anything either. She's just a good actress. So it's like you end up coming away. We were at the movie it wasn't just the two of us, and somebody's like, well, I actually didn't like that character. It's like, well, okay, you didn't like the character. That's fine. But acknowledge that the actress brought a whole lot to a big nothing burger of a role.
Yeah, she does a good job. I mean, the character is schizophrenic. They forgot, like, some scenes they're writing her as the new Egon Spangler, like she is autistic. And then other scenes, she's kind of cool and gets it, and she's more self-aware. Sometimes she believes in her corny jokes. Sometimes she has actual, like, witty comebacks. Mm-hmm. And it's very weird. And there again, it's just like, you couldn't just dial her one direction. Like, just make her the awkward kid, and then it'll be really sweet when Podcast is a whole other thing we could talk about. What a stupid character. But, when Podcast becomes her friend and everything, that'll be sweet because she never had friends because she is...
Can I call him Magical Asian Friend? Is that okay with you?
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. He deserves to be called it.
He's like the perfect, cute, charming friend just existing to be your friend and fulfill a plot. Necessity.
Maybe it's because he does...
While also adding diversity to this random town that doesn't appear that it should have much.
Well, also, I want to say that he kind of works because he's a really charming actor and they play well off each other.
Yeah,
and you like them talking together and doing stuff.
Well, and there's more than one way to answer my problem with these weird half-written characters. One way is to fully write them. That's the good way. But then the other way is to just reduce them to an archetype, and that's to color. And that's what Podcast works as. He is, as Jake pointed out, he's just the fifth Goonie,
Right.
He's
Data, he's something like that, where when you have, and you're going for that Spielberg vibe, you can always have the character. Like, you see that kind of thing all the time. He's just got one shtick, he's got one thing, it's amplified, he speaks like nobody would speak for their age, and it's okay because he's bringing some color and humor, and it's a part of the fun of, of everything. But they don't really bring together that team. If it had been less McKenna Grace's character, what's her? Phoebe?
Phoebe, yeah.
If it had been less a Phoebe story and more a Phoebe and Finn and Zendaya, fake Zendaya and fake Ned, then you could have had more of that team vibe.
Yeah, but it's weird. Like, they didn't want to write anything for fake Zendaya. They wanted her to be fake Zendaya, and they thought that would be enough. But it's like she can't just be the object of lust like she would have been in an 80s movie. But then we still want to actually find a weird way to nod our head at that.
Show her back as she's putting on her
Yeah, that was gross.
Yeah.
Just throw it in.
Yeah.
The only character they actually give an arc to is the mom. She's a loser without a dad who gets to have emotional closure with her dad who abandoned her.
After disappearing into the role of a dog for the entire third act.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, I didn't say that they gave her dignity, only that they gave her an arc.
Or that it worked. I mean,
right.
She's tasked with imitating Sigourney Weaver's possession scene.
I just mean she's consistent. Like
she's consistent. Yeah,
she's actually written.
But here's the thing about the mom.
So far as they write her,
what is her job?
I know.
Like,
she doesn't have one.
But like, who is she? Who was Mrs. Spangler? Like, who is her mom? Like, there's just some basic story beats husband? That the movie
they just ignore.
The movie thinks it can just jump over this stuff, and some of it you can, but you have to at least nod towards it or have some shorthand that covers it. You can't just pretend like some like. I don't know. I don't love Ghostbusters mythology.
I just can't believe they didn't make Annie Potts her mom.
Wait, that's what I was about to say. I don't love the mythology of Ghostbusters, but one thing that I remember sweetly about the first Ghostbusters movie is the relationship between Harold Ramis and Annie Potts. The fact that they just threw that away and now Annie Potts is the realtor or something like that was super lame. Like there are scant few things that an adult can connect to on some level emotionally about the original Ghostbusters. That's one of them.
Well, okay, so in canon, what you're gonna say if you're hitting up against this is, but Annie Potts ended up with Rick Moranis' character, and that was a better fit. That was water finding its level. She aspired to Egon. She shouldn't have aspired that high or something like that. She had to settle, and part of the joke of Ghostbusters 2 is all the ways that she tries to fit up Rick Moranis' character to be Egon Part 2.
Right.
Including dressing him in Egon's Ghostbusters suit and sending him out with a proton pack to stand out and impotently shoot at the outside of the shell while the real Ghostbusters are inside doing the job. But I just don't see why you don't come around and make Annie Potts mom anyway. I mean, goodness.
Well, I just had Reuters put out a poll, and it turns out, statistically speaking, Jake, you're one of 3 people in America that remembers that plot point from Ghostbusters 2. And they needed to make this a sequel to Ghostbusters 1. I mean...
Well, they definitely did and treated it that way. The movie did not act like Ghostbusters 2 was much of anything.
Right, they basically did that, but then we're going to pay lip service to this random plot point. Like, just forget that plot point. It was funny in Ghostbusters 2, I assume. But who cares? Of course, Spangler and Annie Potts should be together.
Yeah, or what they needed to do is have had a fling or whatever.
Yeah, or something. Like
something, because what you can't have is an Annie Potts cameo where Annie Potts
doesn't seem to care that much about Harold Ramis, for one thing. That's emotionally deflating.
Yeah. Well, and then what are you going to do if she was? Are you really supposed to believe that Annie Potts was the wife of the crazy dirt farmer that nobody took seriously and everybody was isolated from? Like, how's she going to play that character? I don't know. It's just problems on problems.
Problems on problems.
For plot reasons in this movie, they nix the obvious choice.
Well, there's a lot of bad things to talk about this movie. I think we've talked about a lot of them. I don't know that we ever really closed the loop on Harold Ramis's ghost at the end showing up stinks. And I think the thing that feels is really cynical about it to me is that I think that's how you get Murray to do the movie. I don't think Murray has any interest in doing a Ghostbusters movie. Certainly not interest in putting the proton pack on and playing Venkman again. But if you give him an opportunity to rewrite history a little bit and lend a little more closure to his relationship, his famously bad relationship with Harold Ramis, I think he'll do it. And if you watch the interviews with Murray, he talks about, everybody's going to cry when they see the end of this. It's obvious. I just think it's really slimy. The whole Ramis angle and the whole Murray and Ramis angle is just, it feels really bad.
Well, I wish they would have done something like the joke that I pitched to you guys upstairs.
Yes, which you should now pitch to the audience of this podcast.
Well, you have this long 5-minute scene of everybody making eye contact and making their peace with the ghost of Harold Ramis.
Right.
And at some point, what you should have actually done is had Harold Ramis go full-on scary ghost on Bill Murray's character in a jump scare moment.
And
Yeah, just like a, Bilbo with a ring or something like that. Just like
or the librarian in Ghostbusters.
or the librarian in the original Ghostbusters, just like have Ramis jump scare Bill Murray, have him wet himself for goodness sake, like have the joke be on Bill Murray for 1 second, have him be put on his heels, have Harold Ramis's ghost get the upper hand and laugh at him, or in a way that everybody laughs at him, and the joke's on Bill Murray, and that actually does more to accomplish whatever it is we're trying to accomplish here for Bill Murray's legacy.
Yeah, but the movie wasn't enough steps ahead of its audience and of... I mean, this movie's just not so boring and so pandering. It's not subversive. Like the original Ghostbusters kind of hates society and hates people and hates hotel concierges that are, angry at us for blowing up their hotels while we bust ghosts. It's anarchic in a way that's fun for kids, and
and we're gonna charge you like crazy for it.
Yeah. Bill Murray has this he's subversive. It's what's fun. We could have a conversation of whether it's godly fun, but it's fun. It's what's fun about Ghostbusters. If you like
While
Ghostbusters.
we're in this room, I'm going to try to whip the tablecloth out from under this and break all the glasses, because I can.
This, to make a reverent Ghostbusters movie, which is what this tries to be, is to miss the entire spirit of Ghostbusters. No pun intended.
Well, yeah. It misses almost every opportunity it takes.
Yeah.
And then
Well, okay, so square that with me saying at the top that trying to make a Spielberg movie was the right move, or potentially the right move.
You just have to Zanify the Spielberg formula, which this movie isn't willing to do. I'm not saying I know how. I just feel I have an instinct it could be done.
I mean, Spielberg also produced Gremlins. There is Dark Amblin, and there's a way to do that. There's a way to, and Ghostbusters has more of that spirit. You're welcome, people. You're welcome, guys. But yeah, you can't. So here's the thing I kept thinking. This movie really makes me appreciate Force Awakens, because Force Awakens does a couple things right that this movie does dead wrong. Number one. Hey, you're welcome.
Oh, man.
What can I say except you're welcome. Star Wars Force Awakens. Here's the main thing that Star Wars Force Awakens does right. It knows why people loved the original Star Wars, and it makes a sequel to those feelings. And so it creates camaraderie between the characters. It has a bunch of characters that all seem to really like each other, high energy, likable people. Say what you will about the sequels, but Rey's really likable. You buy her relationship with Han Solo. You buy her relationship with Finn and Dracula. What are the other characters' names in that thing? What's the black guy's name? It's not Dracula. No, it's Finn. Yeah. Okay. What's Poe? Poe is his name.
Poe Dameron.
See, there was a weird connection in my brain to Dracula. You can see how I made it to Dracula there.
No,
that stream of conscious, because Poe. Yeah.
Edgar Allan
Poe to other horror, to Victorian horror, to Dracula.
Obvious.
Yeah, it all makes... Well, I'm in the moment.
Brain,
I'm in the moment, like a great improv guy. I'm in the moment. So it captures the spirit of Star Wars, which J.J. Abrams correctly figured out was high energy, fun, bantery characters, shooting
cool
guns
places,
down hallways, being in the desert, and it gives you enough stuff. And then it does not have Luke Skywalker save the day. And I think we were all mad that it didn't. Like, you're not even going to have Luke meet Han. But it does not rely on, you're going to have all this emotion about Luke, and so just having him show up will be enough. But when he shows up, it means we can throw away the arc with the other characters. Now, I know The Mandalorian did this, and I'm going to get to that. And I know it's what we said Rise of Skywalker should have done, and I'm going to get to that. But it was still smart that Force Awakens didn't do that. In the equivalent movie, like if Ghostbusters was being smart in the ways, then we'd have a subversive comics connected to a high adventure kids movie. But it would be fast. It would be zany. It wouldn't be these long kind of indie scenes.
You know what? Sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Well, let me just finish my point.
Yeah, finish your point.
It would be fast. It would be zany. It would be exciting. It would have lots of jokes. It would have moments of subversion, like, oh, I just can't believe that they did that. You know, you get James Gunn to do a pass on the script. Like, I mean, I don't really like that idea, but you know what I mean? Like, it'd have some moments of rebellious, just like, oh boy, you can't do that in a movie, because it'd be making a true spiritual sequel, to the original Ghostbusters. And then if you wanted to have Venkman in, you either write a part for him, for Bill Murray to play, or you just have him show up completely as a little symbol at the end, the way Luke Skywalker shows up at the end of Force Awakens. Like, oh, there's Venkman. He means something iconically to us. But, or, you know, there's the guys in their proton pack. That's cool. But you don't actually rely on them having emotion when you haven't laid that into this movie.
What if you have a phone call with Dan Aykroyd where he has time to establish the backstory and the mythology and really make you feel like it's grounded and connected
while talking to a complete stranger?
Yeah.
Right, opening up to this little girl on the phone and
that he wants to hang up with, but for some reason suddenly decides to just tell everything.
Yeah, I think that would be a good way to establish continuity.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, it's good stuff. It's good stuff.
Or you could just not do that. The thought that occurred to me that it's a little like derailing to throw it out there. If this had been conceived as a 6 or 8 episode arc.
Yeah, I actually had the same. I thought about that while watching it.
Yeah.
This is a better TV show.
It's a much better TV show. It's a mystery, actually. It's a puzzle. You get the episode where she solves the puzzle of the floor and finds the trap. You get the episode where she pieces together and she's figuring out who her granddad is and why he was here in the first place. And it becomes this sort of like kids' adventure mystery show where she is cracking the code and solving the puzzle and has come to like, he wasn't crazy. He was special. He's like me. Like those moments could have meant something more than they did.
But then you have time to develop Finn Wolfhard, his relationship with Hot Chick. You have time to develop Paul Rudd as more than just a guy that does random things to make certain scenes and exposition work. You have time
to develop the mom and just show her trying to figure out, well, how am I supposed to live here? I thought I had an inheritance. I guess I don't.
Right.
You have time to make it a world where adults don't always behave like adults should because it's zany Ghostbusters world.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what you want.
And you can, as you build towards your finale, we can see the pieces coming together with the original trio as they move towards.
And then at the end of episode 7 of this miniseries, they show up and you go, yay! And then episode 8 is a whole episode with like an arc in it and things written and shtick for Bill Murray to do, and not just, hey, Bill Murray, can you do the same joke about Gozer's your girlfriend 9,000 times? Which in the old, like, Ramis days, that is all they show up with. And then Ramis and Murray, because they're genius and they're electric together, come up with a bunch of funny stuff. And Bill Murray's there to play and they do something magical. But that's not who Bill Murray is these days. And that's okay. He doesn't have to be. But
how old is the guy anyway?
I mean, he's got to be gone.
He looks really old.
He finally really looks old. He is. Oh, he's just 71. Huh?
I would have guessed about that.
Yeah, I was going to put him a little older.
I just can't.
I was going to guess 70.
I can't recall seeing him ever look so old in a movie.
No.
Yeah.
Me either.
Yeah, he looked old and tired in this movie.
I just saw a kids show with my wife that I recommend called The Mysterious Benedict Society. There's nothing objectionable. It's a fun, funny, quirky thing on Disney Plus where it is smart kids solving puzzles. And the adults all are kind of dumb, but they're dumb in a very consistent way. I mean, they're still the adults in the kids' world, but it's not realism, is what I mean. It establishes a quirky, funny world where these kids can solve mysteries and have silly things happen and have certain kinds of villains that are all consistent from a kid perspective. It's really fun. And this movie is like, no, we want a sense of realism. Here's the sheriff, except he's not going to react like you actually destroyed his town with a mysterious weapon. But he is going to try to give you a sense of, it's just like, guys, stop trying to split this difference.
Yeah, the Ghostbusters from I don't want to say the real Ghostbusters because that's the animated series, but the Ghostbusters from Ghostbusters 1984 don't belong in the universe of this movie. And that's a pretty crucial mistake for any kind of, when you make a sequel or when you make an adaptation, the thing people always get wrong is people are going to be mad if we adapt a book and we don't keep all the plot elements that, but actually nobody cares.
Nobody cares. Everybody understands.
They just want the feeling. They read the book. It gave them a feeling. They want that same feeling. They saw the first movie. It's the reason why people feel so betrayed by something like Temple of Doom, because they wanted that Raiders feeling. And then they got a pretty good dark adventure movie that, now has its place in history and we all kind of like it. But everybody felt betrayed by it because it didn't give them the same feeling.
And it's why the Harry Potter movies are as beloved as the books.
Despite jettisoning all kinds of things, changing things.
Whole characters missing Peeves and all that sort of thing. Like, for the most part,
it feels like Harry Potter.
Each movie feels like Harry Potter. It feels like it took a while for it to get its feet, but once it got its feet, like, everything feels like it should feel for the most part. And in some cases, better.
Right.
And so it just works, like it harmonizes.
Yeah.
Right.
And nobody feels like, so my kids, they get to watch the first 3 movies before they read the books because I don't care about Harry Potter that much.
Mm-hmm.
And then they read the books before they watch the movies from 4 on.
Right.
When they get to the right age for it. And none of the kids, like Ian just read the first 2. And Ian's the kind of kid who's like, I wish I would have never have even seen the Lord of the Rings movies.
Right.
Because I had this whole world built and it got destroyed. And now I'm angry because I can't have that back. Peter Jackson's idea replaced my idea.
Mm-hmm.
And he's that kind of kid. But to him, reading the Harry Potter books is just like, oh, wow, this same exact world is just that much more rich and cool and fun behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm getting behind the scenes looks at all of these things. It's like...
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, just trying to prove your point.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's... The example I always think of is Jurassic Park. The book and the movie have nothing to do with each other, but they both have dinosaurs attack a theme park. They both have the feeling of what if dinosaur, and so it doesn't matter. Nobody cares.
Yeah. No, it really doesn't. You're right.
Nerds will complain about all kinds of things, but the reason The Force Awakens works, basically, the reason people kind of liked it is because it gave you that Star Wars feeling. And the reason everybody turned on Last Jedi and everybody turned on so many of these other ones is because they didn't give you the Star Wars feeling. Whatever other things they did right, you just didn't end up feeling, you didn't walk out of the movie feeling the same way that you walked out of an old George Lucas Star Wars movie.
What was conflicting about The Last Jedi is that it gave you all of the feelings in the moment.
Right, but the cumulative effect
but the cumulative effect as you walked away was, well, that just, I think
that maybe that guy hated Star Wars.
I think he just destroyed everything I love.
Right.
He fed me so much sugar in the movie that I swallowed all the poison, and now I think Star Wars is dead in my heart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hate this movie and this guy.
And Ghostbusters actually is somewhat similar in that it gives you like, ooh, that's what those demon dogs looked like. That's kind of a cool new way of doing those retro special effects. And there's Gozer and there's all the things. But the cumulative effect has nothing to do with Ghostbusters. And when the Ghostbusters show up,
oh my goodness,
they're just old and tired, and
they step out from behind a car or something.
Yeah, it's really lame. It's like
it's very lame.
It's like they didn't even want to be there. Bill Murray didn't want to do it. Dan Aykroyd's old and fat, and the reason I keep saying old is because it does matter. I mean, there is something not to be ageist or something, but there is a certain flippancy and rebellion, and
they had real verve in that
energy
first movie. When Ray's gonna like go on about whatever, and Bill Murray's gonna try his shtick on the babe.
Yeah, and to pretend like Bill Murray in his 70s has all that same thing, those same things, and brings all that same stuff. It's like, no, he doesn't. He can't just flirt with the monster. It's funny to see in his 40s, Bill Murray or whatever he was in his 30s, flirt with the monster. It's weird to see this old man. There's no joke there. You lost it. Like there's nothing.
I mean, if he would have made a joke instead of like going on about how we could have worked and been a power couple, if he would have said, wow, if he would have, again, put the joke on himself where you can either do this straight on or you can do the inversion of, wow, you've held up great. I wish I could say the same for myself, or, you've not held up at all. Like, I don't know, something that just puts the joke on himself.
And that's a fantastic Ghostbusters 3, by the way. Egon Spangler is dead. We had a falling out, and now I'm an old man who doesn't have the juice anymore. That's a pretty fun. I mean, it's what they probably should have done with the fourth Indiana Jones. It's what they did actually somewhat. It's what they unsuccessfully did with Last Jedi, but they did somewhat successfully do with Han Solo in Force Awakens. You just have to address and lean into what you've got. You can't pretend like 71-year-old Bill Murray walking out into your movie is the same thing.
Yeah.
Or has the same effect. It's crazy.
Not the same vibe, not the same energy, not the same guy.
Because not the same guy. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I want to briefly address, so I said an objection to the whole, you can't just have the Ghostbusters show up, is that we love it when Luke Skywalker shows up at the end of Mandalorian, and we love it when, what's the other big, we always argued that Rise of Skywalker should have just ended with all of our favorite heroes.
All the Force ghosts. Yeah.
Well, the reason there is because the movie and the franchise was so broken at that point that was the only card that you had left to play. It wasn't that we thought it would actually be a good movie if that happened. It's just that we knew the movie had nowhere to go but terrible, and so it would have been...
Might as well do the thing that everybody's going to be excited about seeing again.
Right. Rian Johnson has already crashed the airplane. It ain't going to fly again, but my metaphor runs out here. You know, the stewardess can still deliver some snacks.
Yeah, but the way that the fan service worked / did not work in Rise of Skywalker was it was all the wrong things.
Right. Yeah. And then with Mandalorian, we care about the characters. We've set up a situation where we're not actually just pushing the nostalgia button.
We don't need Luke in this show.
Right. It could be Ahsoka. It could be anyone. What we want is what we've set up is we need a Deus Ex Machina to make this story work. It really doesn't matter. You know, Admiral whoever could come out of the clouds and blow up the bad guys in his spaceship, and that would be the story beat.
Any Jedi could show up that you weren't suspecting. Plo Koon could come back. Like, it just doesn't matter. Because what we care about is already in that, on the bridge of the ship. Right.
And we've set up somebody's going to come and they're going to take away Baby Yoda and it's going to be sad. And that's the beat we're playing and that's the story we're telling. The story that we're telling in Ghostbusters Afterlife is a coming of age story. Will these kids figure out how to be Ghostbusters? And so to then be like, yeah, no, not really. But here's some old guys that you remember. It's not the same thing. We haven't actually built a vehicle that deposits Bill Murray and company at the end of our story in a way that makes emotional sense. And so you actually resent them. I resented them. And I don't think it's because I'm grumpy. I think it's because I like good stories. And the proper way to end this story is Finn Wolfhard mans up. McKenna Grace figures that out with her science, you know. The proper way to end this story is Egon Spangler somehow influences things from beyond. But Peter Venkman just doesn't have anything to do with this story. It doesn't matter how many phone calls you have with Dan Aykroyd. He's just not part of the story. And Bill Murray obviously didn't want to do more than a cameo. And he didn't even want lines. He wanted to ad-lib. Right. And apparently. And so you can either find a clever way to write that in, which I think there probably is, but it has to somehow lean into Venkman just doesn't care. Like, he actually really doesn't care. Like, let's cut to Venkman in the tropics. You know, I mean, that's right. Let's actually have him not show up at the end. I mean, that's the kind of subversion that the real Ghostbusters would do. But no, Peter Venkman's our hero. He's the star of Ghostbusters. No, he's not. Peter Venkman was never a hero. He's a cynical jerk played by Bill Murray. That's what we want to see. Except he was the hero in Ghostbusters 2. He was the hero in Ghostbusters 2. I think love was the real hero, though. All the love that New Yorkers had for each other that stopped this emotion slime or something like that. Well, once you start singing Old Lang Syne, I mean, the slime's going to start to melt away. I was just remarking to my wife the other day that is true. Once you start singing Old Lang Syne, the slime melts away. Guys, do you have any more thoughts on this thoroughly dispiriting piece of crap movie? Who you gonna call back? Neo for the Matrix Resurrections. High hopes. That movie's gonna rule. Yeah. It's gonna slap. I'm looking forward to it. Right. I hate the cynicism of this movie. I hate the fact that wokeism denies us basic story beats. I hate lazy nostalgia bait. I hate Bill Murray being in a movie that he doesn't want to be in. I love Bill Murray being in a movie he wants to be in.
I really like the steel-eating ghost.
You liked Muncher?
Muncher?
He's my favorite character.
Aw.
I think I like Podcast. Podcast had an arc. I mean, his arc was he made a podcast. It was cute. Dan Aykroyd listened to podcast, and he thought it picked up around the 46th episode.
It was cute.
That was like the setup payoff. Remember when we had those in movies?
Yeah.
Yeah. It just, even that felt so stupid and lame at that moment.
It did. I agree. But you could see how if you were vibing with the movie, that would have been a fun little moment.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, what a cringe boomer thing to make podcast be named podcast. And like, maybe it's just that we do podcasts and we know that not most podcasts aren't like the idea that everyone has from Serial of like a ace reporter walking around with a microphone or whatever and asking people to do takes and stuff. But what a lame, like, get over yourself, boomer. You don't understand podcasts. And maybe this would have been cool and interesting like 10 years ago.
Yeah. The thing that he would do is hand her his entire catalog on a USB drive.
Yeah. So
what the heck?
yeah.
Like, what year were you guys born?
What's the thing that people say to boomers? What's like the catchphrase? Like,
okay, boomer.
Yeah, okay, boomer. This movie had a number of okay, boomer moments.
It's really silly.
Yeah. And no onion head, which is a national tragedy. And although Ben liked Muncher, he ate metal.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I liked Ecto 1. I liked that action scene. The Muncher action scene was pretty fun.
That set piece was fun. But the whole set piece where we're randomly going to have Finn Wolfhard walk to the barn in the middle of the night to uncover Ecto 1 when the light goes out that we inserted just for the trailer. Man, so much of that crap in this whole movie. You don't even remember that scene, do you?
Yeah, vaguely, now that you mention it.
There's this whole scene where for no reason whatsoever, it's the middle of the night and we cut to Finn Wolfhard walking out to the barn, turning on the light, lifting up the cover on the thing, and then the light going out.
Yeah.
Just like, what? This movie is such garbage.
It's pretty garbage. McKenna Grace, I hope she has a good career. She's
going to have a spectacular career unless she goes off some kind of weird sexual rails.
Yeah, which having her play an androgynous little Harold Ramis clone is probably not the best way to get her on good sexual rails, but I cannot deny that she was very charming in this movie.
She's cute, talented. Yeah. How old is she?
12, I think.
12-ish. Yeah. So she's got like critical years to get through if she's going to, but I mean, Finn Wolfhard's done it pretty well.
Yeah.
You're going to have to transition to adulthood and get out of these Stranger Things roles.
Yeah, stop playing 80s nostalgia people. What a terrible, cynical, thoroughly despicable. I just want to say one of the worst movies we've covered on this podcast. Probably Have we covered anything worse?
I can't recall anything.
I mean,
off the top of my head.
I didn't love Tenet, but at least it was ambitious. I didn't love Black Widow, but it was sort of harmless compared to this. Man, I'm sure we've probably done a worse movie.
I can't imagine what it would be.
Yeah.
Dune.
Bold words.
This is more cynical than Black Widow.
Yeah. Black Widow's pretty bad.
Look up our catalog real quick. Let me pull out my USB drive.
Oh, yeah. Pull out your USB drive.
And I will plug it into my
Windows
PC since it's the only place it has.
Explanation for that was that there was like no signal in town or something, right? I think it was built into the plot, Jake. I think it was a very careful point.
And yet he managed to get that show published such that Dan Aykroyd could listen to it in New York City.
Oops. Well,
Knowing might be up there.
Knowing the Nicolas Cage movie that's a cinematic masterpiece that we all loved more than any movie that we've reviewed.
I like Knowing a lot. I do not.
The Tomorrow War?
Definitely.
Oh, okay. That's in the running.
The Tomorrow War's way up there. Oh, Wonder Woman 1984.
In the Heights.
In the Heights. Yeah, these are all terrible movies. Black Widow's pretty terrible.
Yeah, Black Widow's just kind of bland terrible, though.
That's right.
Wonder Woman 84, yeah.
Black Widow doesn't really inspire the...
Crystal Skull.
Hatred.
Yeah.
No. In the Heights has some catchy stuff. It's kind of it's terrible, but it's
so annoying.
But it's kind of pretty sometimes. It's got some ambition, I guess, is what I'm saying. I want to narrow it down to, from what Jake said so far, Wonder Woman 1984.
Pocahontas.
Tomorrow War.
Yeah, Pocahontas is bad, but
that doesn't belong in this category.
No, it doesn't belong in the list.
Men in Black International.
I have no memory of that movie, but I think I kind of liked it. I thought it was kind of cute. I don't know.
Okay. Well, it certainly didn't leave as bad a taste in my mouth as this movie.
It left no taste in mine. I think at one time it has Thor and he picks up a hammer and it's funny because he plays Thor.
He throws it at somebody and it bounces off of him or something like that.
I don't know that I even would have known there was a Men in Black International if you hadn't just reminded me. Like, that movie left so little of an impression. I'm starting to recall it. It's got Liam Neeson in a small role, right? Like he's the kind of the Tommy Lee Jones figure.
He's like the Rip Torn character, I think.
Yes.
And then, yeah, it's just like, you know what 2 characters really worked in a recent blockbuster movie known as Thor Ragnarok? Chris Hemsworth and
Tessa Thompson.
Let's cast them in the new Men in Black.
Yeah. I don't remember it that well, but I think Wonder Woman 1984 is probably the worst movie we've done. It's probably worse than Ghostbusters.
And it's bad on every level. It's bad on feminism.
It's bad on
messaging,
on moral level,
craft,
every possible.
Yeah. Bad on every moral level. Bad on every craft level.
The action scenes stink.
There's nothing to enjoy.
She runs around in her underwear. She fights Chester Cheetah, and the Mandalorian's son really loves him, even though he really did a number on the world with his wish machine or whatever. Yes.
All right. So, yeah.
This is second only to the travesty. Dune. Yeah. You mean the miniseries? You mean the David Lynch movie?
No, I mean...
Because those are both great.
Yeah, right. I mean the Denis Villeneuve.
Yes.
Or Villeneuve, or however you say his name.
Yeah. Well, that movie stinks.
Well, you know what? I'm just gonna say that of those 3 movies...
Dune's the one you'd least want to watch again?
I think so.
There's a lot less ethnic warbling in Ghostbusters Afterlife.
I probably would watch Dune again, although, I don't know. It's just a depressing prospect.
I don't want to have to watch any of them. I think Wonder Woman I might want to watch the least.
I don't think I would rewatch Dune before I saw Dune 2. I'd go see Dune 2, but I don't think I'm going to rewatch that movie.
Well, I'm not either, but we were talking about the lesser of 3.
That just reminded me of Master and Commander, which is a much better movie than any of those. Boy, I'd rather watch Ghostbusters Afterlife than either one of those 2.
I would too.
So I guess
this can't be the worst movie we've ever watched. Then
it's not.
It's certainly a lot shorter than Dune, and there's a lot less ethnic warbling. Oh, you know what? I did like. What successfully pushed my nostalgia button?
What?
Even though it was completely cheap and lame the way they did it, it was just really nice to hear an 80s style. And they were just repeating cues from the old movie, but it was nice to hear a score, like an 80s style orchestral score in a movie.
They used it very temperately.
Yeah.
I felt like...
Yes, I liked the score. I marked that. And then I forgot about it.
Well, it just made me wish, like, we had scores with themes and, it's like, do-da-dee-dee-doo. They're doing something funny now. It's the funny music. Do-dee-doo-dee-doo.
Yep. We've got the funny music and we've got the something scary and weird is happening music.
Yeah, the theremin.
And we've got something heroic is happening.
Yep. And then we've got the grandiose, light coming out of the sky music. And
the one thing that one beat that both Ghostbusters movies did was the way that they would like use like pop music during like their monster scenes and stuff like that. And I missed that. Like, that weird Signs song in the original Ghostbusters when you've got like the moons.
Oh yeah, that's one of my favorite scenes. I love that.
Yeah. Signs, like that whole like 80s vibe, weird, like, and then we're seeing all this stuff happen. The
taxi driver and also the famous bad scene from Ghostbusters is in that montage, I think. But this movie needed a nice pop montage of new monsters. Let's not just do a guy that looks exactly like the taxi driver.
Yeah, let's not. I mean, I think there was a one-eyed monster that reminded me of something from the real Ghostbusters. I don't know if that was a Who You Gonna Call Back or I think that's what we're going to call the cameos.
Who you going to call back? I love it.
Yeah.
Well, folks, I accidentally made a bunch of spirit puns, and Jake said, who you going to call back? Was it our greatest podcast of all time?
I'm thinking so.
Do you want who's someone? Do you want Brandon to show up because you remember him from podcasts that you used to like, and so even though he's 90 years old and has nothing to offer to this podcast, you want Brandon to show up and say something into the microphone, even though he didn't see the movie and has something to offer, or something to offer, nothing to offer. Is that what you want?
It would be Ghost Brandon showing up. We'd have to bust them.
Yeah, that's true. Would you like it if me and Jake had a giant fight and stopped working together, and then Jake died 30 years later, and then I made a bunch of podcasts about how Jake was my best friend and his ghost really liked me? How'd you feel about that, folks? And we paid Ben a bunch of money to come and say, I'm here.
Yeah, we could do it.
And we told him he could have a post-credits scene
where he's actually the one who made it and is going to be the one kicking off our new Ghostbusters franchise.
Yeah. I like how you dropped the metaphor there. Oh, man, the post-credits scenes and that lame Sigourney Weaver cameo with Bill Murray.
It was so cute.
Well, again, it just feels like the original spirit of Ghostbusters is not, oh boy, I hope Bill Murray ends up with Sigourney Weaver. It's, oh, this horn dog really wants to end up with Sigourney Weaver because she's cute. It's not like, oh, I feel so, it just warms the cockles of my heart. They made sure to show that she has a wedding ring. Venkman and Sigourney Weaver got together. Yay.
They made it.
But also, nobody cares. Nobody cares. I'll tell you who people do care about. It's our patron award winner of genius. What do we call this thing?
Awesomeness, I think.
I don't know how to do my own shtick. I'm like Bill Murray. I don't remember how to do my own shtick anymore. Movies folder. There it is. It's the PCAA. The Presbyterian Church of America. Nope. The Patron Choice Award of Awesomeness. And I'll tell you who deserves this. It's Seth. Seth B.E.
Seth B.E.?
Yep, that's how he's listed here. And Ben, why do you think Seth deserves to be a Patron Choice Award of Awesomeness?
Well, because he's like a jump scare patron. He jumps out and surprises you with this awesome patronage.
Mm-hmm.
And it's frightening.
Yeah.
But it's something you really appreciate after it happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Seth, you just got the greatest shout out of any of our podcasts. I hope you know that. You scare us with how much we love you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what the other interesting thing about Ghostbusters that baffles me? It's just Bill Murray's lines actually aren't funny in and of themselves. They're just kind of all something spooky's happening and I'm not reacting the way a normal person would. I mean, but they're funny because he's Bill Murray. It's just the magic of Bill Murray. He doesn't need material. It's just interesting to me. Bill Murray. We'll litigate him.
He slimed me.
Yeah, like it's not funny when a normal person says he slimes me, but when Bill Murray says it, it is funny. And I don't dispute that, by the way. Bill Murray is an interesting fella. Some people are just likable and just funny, and Bill Murray is one of them. I don't know. We'll have to do some more Bill Murray movies. He's fun to talk about. Okay, until next time.
Something weird in it don't look good.
Who are you going to call?
Harold Ramis's ghost to come and write a script.